We are live on a Wednesday night here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all being here, talking a week 6 across the country. We will leave the link there in the chat, take some calls from you. So let's get it on, talking college football. And we're going to focus on this Ohio State-Maryland game. First and foremost, we got Trey Moore stopping by. And you can join his work on Locked On Terps. So talking Maryland, Ohio State. Trey, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well. Good to have you here to talk about this one.
Glad to be here.
So Ohio State's defeated Maryland 8 consecutive times since they joined the Big Ten. I saw a stat today that Ohio State scored 57 points per game in those games. So it hasn't been real close, although Maryland certainly got real close in 2018 with a 2-point conversion that failed. That led Ohio State to a Big Ten championship eventually. Mike Locksley took over this program, didn't have a whole lot of success out west, but takes over this program after a stint at Alabama. And I think he had his doubters. I'll include myself. Not that I thought it was a terrible hire, but I just kind of questioned, okay, is this guy going to be able to do some good work at Maryland? And here we are after a couple bowl victories for the first time back-to-back in a long time, and off to a nice 5-0 start.
Yeah, no, we're 5-0 for the first time since 2001. So Coach Locksley has done a great job with this program. I mean, I think a lot of people had doubts with the Coach Locksley hiring overall, but overall what he's done to the program, he's completely transformed it. If you look at the win totals, every year he's actually added a win to his total win. So every year we've gone up at least one win. And last year we were at 8. And so this year, can we get to 9? Can we get to 10 wins? That's the biggest question mark for the Terps. But I think we're in a really good spot headed into the Ohio State game. I think our guys have confidence. I think we're flying around offensively and defensively. The only thing is we haven't really been tested. We've gone down early on in games, but the opponents that we've played, whether it's Indiana, whether it's Michigan State, haven't been the best opponents yet. So overall, this is our first real test against an amazing Ohio State team.
This is actually a question I asked of Mike Locksley at Big Ten Media Days, so I'll throw it up for you, Trey. This has been a team under Locksley, and even before that, when DJ Durkin was pulling in some nice recruiting classes that could match teams like Ohio State, and maybe match might be an overstep slightly, but we're really strong at running back, especially wide receiver, especially corner, and in the defensive secondary. Issues, not that they didn't have a player or two up front on defense or offensive linemen, but didn't have the depth, didn't have 5 offensive linemen, 6, 7, 8 offensive linemen, didn't have the trench play that you need to take on Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, those teams. And he felt pretty confident, which, again, what else was he going to say? That they could compete with those kind of teams, going forward, and specifically this season.
Yeah, overall, I mean, that's the biggest question mark for us. I think you pointed it out perfectly. We have the skill guys. We have the receivers. We have the running back, Roman Hemby. If you're not familiar much with Maryland, Roman Hemby was actually second on Mel Kiper's big board in terms of running backs. I don't know. He's kind of slowed down throughout the season, but we have maybe the deepest wide receiver group in the Big Ten, not named Ohio State. A lot of people think that, but the biggest question mark is, can we do it up front, whether it's the offensive line protecting. And we know how Ohio State's got some guys on that defensive line, whether it's JT or Jack Sawyer or Hall. I've heard they've been a little bit disappointing. I actually just got off a podcast with the Ohio State Locked On Buckeyes, and he said it has been a little bit disappointing in terms of their defensive line. But our offensive line, we went into the season, and it was our biggest question mark. Overall, we were unsure of what to expect, and Coach Locksley kind of said, we have 8 guys that could play. But in terms of me, I looked at it as, you know how they say with quarterbacks, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. So I kind of looked at that as the offensive line too, where he was like, we have 8 guys who can play. But I said, then we have 8 guys that can play. What are we supposed to do with that? Do we really have a starting 5 unit? And I think it's come together not bad. We have one really good player up front in DJ Glaze. That's going to be an NFL player. And there's some solid players up front, but that's definitely still a question mark. And it's been okay in terms of pass protecting at times. It's been kind of on and off in pass protecting or run blocking. I haven't seen a ton of it come together at one time, but we'll see this weekend. We'll get tested against Ohio State in terms of our offensive line and even our defensive line. It's almost a whole new group up there, almost all new starters. So we'll see overall how those two groups play overall, but I think that's really the deciding factor. I think we can compete with, Ohio State. They got the best wide receiver in the country, but we have a top 25 wide receiver group in the country. So I think in terms of skill positions, we can definitely compete, but it's really the difference in the offensive and defensive line that's going to, I think, make this game.
We are talking Terps with Trey Moore. You can catch his work there at Locked On Terps. You see the Twitter handle right there. Maryland takes on Ohio State coming up Saturday. Buckeyes a 19-point favorite at home, and that's a noon kickoff on Fox. Talia Tagovailoa, everybody should be familiar with him. There's only a few quarterbacks in the country that I can come up with that have been quarterbacking a team as long as he has. It's, this is 2023, and in college football, to be quarterback going all the way back to week 1 of 2020, he's got a ton of experience. Seems like he's eliminated some of the early mistakes that he made in his career, throwing a few too many picks, but definitely a skilled passer. We know what his brother's accomplished, and he's a fun player to watch too.
No, yeah, for sure a fun player to watch. I've enjoyed getting to watch Talia play. He's arguably the best Maryland quarterback ever, and there's no one I'd rather go into battle with this week against Ohio State and having a 5-0 Maryland team and maybe Coach Loxley's best team yet. I think it's Coach Loxley's best team yet. So there's no one I'd rather go into battle with than Talia Tagovailoa. And right now, if you look at the numbers, he's first in the Big Ten in passing yards, first in touchdowns. So he's having a great season overall. And I said it's even a little bit better than his past seasons, but he has been in college football a while, but I think that helps us. I think he's experienced. I think he's ready to go. He's played this Ohio State team a lot, but I still say he's missing that signature win as a Maryland quarterback. Can we take down Ohio State? Can we take down one of the big threes and really make Talia's career really memorable? Obviously, everyone's going to remember him having all the records in the record books, but can he make that signature win where the Maryland fans can look back at him and say, oh, we took down a top 5 Ohio State team and Talia really made his mark there? That's kind of what I'm still waiting for. Of course, like I said, he has all the records in terms of passing yards, in terms of touchdowns. He's first in the Big Ten right now in all those categories too. But can he take down that team and have that signature performance and that big type of win is what I still want to see from Talia.
Yeah, since they've reached that 7 to 8 win level here the past 2 seasons, they've pretty much beaten everyone they're supposed to beat, and then they run into the big 3 up top and aren't able to get the job done there. Although, the game that they played at the Big House last year, that was a competitive game. It was a game in which Michigan won by a touchdown. They were up by, it kept going, fluctuating between 1 and 2 scores there in the second half. But there were a number of plays, starting with the opening kickoff, flubbing that inside the 5 that basically handed Michigan a touchdown. There was an interception in the end zone Maryland had where the player's foot was barely out of bounds. Michigan had a trap interception that was a bit of a phantom call that I don't know why that wasn't overturned. So they played a really good game and lost to Leah late in that game, right? The backup quarterback came in and threw a touchdown pass. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, Billy Edwards.
Yes. Is he still on the roster?
He is still, in fact, in the roster. He's the backup, and a lot of people think he'll take over next year, but he'll have to beat out Cameron Edge, who's a talented redshirt freshman. So we'll see about how that happens next year. But a lot of people think Billy Edwards is the favorite to take over the job next year.
That's right. Billy Edwards. I'd forgotten that name since he had to take over for Talia against Michigan and did a decent job. And then, of course, the Ohio State game. That was an exciting game, the most watched game of the week in college football, and back and forth. And Maryland had the lead at half, and Ohio State forged ahead, and it took a strip sack touchdown to seal it late for the Buckeyes. I'm looking at this receiver core, Trey, and you had mentioned that you think this room is a top 20 or 25 room in the country. Between Ty Felton, Jay Jones was a receiver that led them in receiving and yardage and so forth last year. Caden Prather comes in from West Virginia. Uh, What are the various roles of these guys? Who's the guy that's going to take the top off the defense? Who plays in the slot? And
Yep.
what are the strengths of these guys?
Yeah, so Caden Prather, I can start with him, transfer from West Virginia. He's 6'4". He's the guy that can kind of go up and get it type of guy, a 50-50 ball, but he's also a good athlete. He does a pretty good job of separating and getting open and just getting yards. And then Jayson Jones, he's our slot guy, like you mentioned. He led our team in receiving last year, and that was with Raheem Jarrett and Copeland and Dante Demas. And so Jayson Jones is really the route runner, the slot guy. I think he's Talia's kind of favorite target. Mr. Third Down, I would say. We get the ball to Jayson Jones. And then Ty Felton is interesting because Ty Felton has really came on this year. He's second on our team in receiving now, but the last 2 games he's led our team in receiving. And then last game he went off against Indiana for 3 touchdowns and over 100 yards. So Ty Felton, the junior, has really came on. And then Octavian Smith is a deep threat. He's a sophomore, so watch out for him to make a play. He's the speedster of the group. He hasn't had a huge impact this year, but he's still young, so look out for him coming in. And then Tyrese Chambers was also another transfer that has been a little bit banged up and is off to a slow start. People thought he would be one of our leading receivers, but he's off to a little bit of a slow start. But watch out, Tyrese Chambers could make an impact against Ohio State.
Trey, as you know, the key to any game, among other things, would be putting pressure on the quarterback. And if you can generate that from 4, then you're in a great place to be able to cover and tackle in space on the back end. But if you can't, then you run that risk of, selling out against the pass and getting burned. So do you feel pretty good about Maryland's ability to create some pressure? And if they do, who would that be?
I don't feel awesome about our ability to create pressure. I think that's probably our biggest weakness of our team. I say our secondary is our strength, but I don't feel particularly confident. I actually think this is an interesting part of the team that a lot of people wouldn't really know, but our talented linebacker, Jayshon Barham, I've said it on the Locked on Terps that I actually think he's our best pass rusher off the edge. So, a lot of the times Coach Loxley and the defensive staff throws him on the edge, and he does an awesome job at generating pass rush off the edge. But also a guy like Quayshawn Fuller does a really good job, Kellen Wyatt. But those are all guys that are kind of new starters overall that we have seen it a little bit. Kellen Wyatt's only a sophomore. If he can generate some pass rush, that could be big. And then Quayshawn Fuller has all the physical attributes. I say he's a pretty freakish athlete, 6'5", got all the size you want, but you wonder if they can get some pass rush from the defensive end spot. But I actually think Jayshon Barham, who's our all-around linebacker, who's an awesome player, is going to be an NFL player. I think he's our best pass rusher off the edge. So I'll be interested to see if that's in the game plan. It all kind of depends. I've kind of related it to Micah Parsons. Obviously, he's not Micah Parsons or even close to that, but the way that Micah Parsons played a lot of linebacker, inside linebacker at Penn State, but then went off the edge, is now mainly an edge rusher in the NFL. I kind of compare it to that a little bit, but overall, look out for Barham on the edge.
Trey, we talked about off the top the elevation of this program from a sub 500 team to 7-6 to 8-5, and now where does Mike Loxley take this team this year? And you'd mentioned, hey, it's been coming in steps, and the next step would be to get to 9 wins. Is that simply for you what a successful season looks like, or is it more involved than that, more complicated than that, or is it simply, bam, we get to 9-4 with a bowl win, then I'm feeling good about making more progress?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's realistic to say that we compete for the Big Ten championship, like even Coach Loxley said before the season, but I do think it's a little bit more complicated. I'd like to see us compete with Ohio State, compete with Penn State, compete with the Michigan, keep at least 2 of the 3 of those games pretty close. I would like to see that happen. And then also going undefeated outside of those 3 games could be big. I kind of expect us to drop one, but that's kind of overall what I think. I'm not sure if it's realistic to say for us to be successful that we're going to take down one of those 3. I don't know if that's just where we are as a program, but overall, maybe going undefeated outside of those 3, because I think we're going to be favored in basically every other game we play. But that's kind of how I see it, really adding on a win if you want to make it in simple terms. But if you want to make it in a little bit more complicated terms, competing with 2 out of 3 of those big games.
Something the team accomplished last year, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. They did accomplish that last year.
Trey Moore, Locked On Terps. Check out his work right there. Trey, we appreciate you stopping by, breaking things down for us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Enjoy the game.
Thank you.
All right. Maryland, Ohio State tops the Big Ten charts. And for many of you who want to talk, whether it's Big Ten or any other conference teams across college football, it's all on the table. Jump on in the chat and also grab the link and give me a call. We're going to run down a few things here as well as take some phone calls as I search for panels. Bam, there we go. That's me. And again, there were a few things working today that caused me to set up this live stream. One would be that, again, we had that appointment with Trey to run down some Maryland football. That would be first and foremost. Also, that it was my attempt every week, starting last week, to run down my power rankings for every conference. And I wasn't real successful last week. I got to the Big Ten and I got to the ACC, and that was it. And here we are late on Wednesday, and I've gotten to none of them. So I was going to produce a video with my Big Ten power rankings, and then I had accomplished all of that on my SEC power rankings. Basically, I just listed them, but hadn't figured out any notes or facts on the SEC. So I got my Big Ten power rankings right here. So we're going to run those down, and we can go to any other conferences you would like. All right. That's what happens when you got too many team channels. You don't focus on the main channel. We got to get back to that. That's going to be a focus. Get this main channel up to speed. Now, let's see. Today, we did our Ohio State Buckeyes live show at 11. We did our Oklahoma Sooners live show at 12:30. We did records on Georgia Clemson. Who am I forgetting? Some others. And then we've had our Florida State show at 6, Miami at 7, and here we are talking college football with all of you. And as we listed on the title, Big Ten Power Rankings, also a Maryland discussion, which you all just enjoyed with Trey. And also, it hit me today, and I will probably need my glasses to do that, and they're nowhere in sight, is that many of you enjoy Michigan Podcast with Steve Dace, and they do some fine work over there. And I am blessed to be invited just about every week to take part in Michigan Podcast. And they also produce other videos over there on the Detroit Lions and the Big Ten over on Michigan Podcast. So check it out with Steve Dace. But every Tuesday we record on Michigan football. And I don't often think about checking the Michigan fans' response to our comments, our discussion, my comments in particular there on Michigan Podcast. So we are going to check that out as soon as we take a call here. So we'll go to Michael first for a call, and then we'll go to the Michigan Podcast comments to see what they have to say about the voice of college football. Michael, how you doing tonight?
I'm hanging in there. And yourself, sir?
I hope I'm doing more than hanging in there, but sometimes that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to go. Head to work here in about a half hour, unfortunately. But hey, got to get the money to pay bills and stuff. No, I'm just saying great job with Trey, by the way, and stuff like that. But no, are you just going to do another video, or are you going to reveal the 14 right now? before the end of the,
Yes, I'm going to reveal them right now.
all
Do you
right.
do you want to hear them right now?
Well, it would be nice, but I guess what I'm saying is Illinois, IU, Michigan State, Northwestern, Nebraska. Is it pretty much any major changes in the bottom half from last week?
Why don't we do this, Michael? Why don't we wait and you're going to go to work and I'll reveal these at some point, and then that will give you something to look forward to when you get off work.
Which should be 6 in the morning.
Well, then you can
I'm-
go to sleep and have a nice little however long you sleep. I hope you get enough sleep.
Yeah.
I know from personal experience that it's difficult for people that work overnight to sleep many times, that you get enough sleep first and foremost. So we want to look out for you first, Mike. But
Yeah, I
Michael,
know. I'm just giving you a hard time, Mark. I'm just out
then
there.
you can check out the Big Ten
Yeah,
power rankings.
but no. If you was to do one overall without picking the top teams from each conference right now and stuff like that, who would the overall top 5 be right now? Not considering your top 25 that actually makes sense. Just from the eyeball test.
Who are the 5 best teams in the country?
Yes. And I'm not talking about the top 25 that actually makes sense.
Yes. I got you. And because this completely plays with people, they don't get it, because we'll be checking out the comments on Michigan podcast here in a minute, because a number of people don't get it and they totally hate me for ranking Michigan 18th and think that I believe that Michigan's the 18th best team in the country. Anyway, the 5 best teams in the country are, do you want them in order?
No particular order.
Okay. I thought you were going to put me on the hook for that. Okay.
No.
Texas, Michigan, Penn State, Florida State, and Alabama right this second.
Okay, I'm surprised you don't have USC. Is it because of the way Alabama performed in their last game and a half against Mississippi State and Ole Miss?
Yeah, they took it to Ole Miss, who turned around and beat LSU, and I believe in that Alabama defense. They had another strong performance against Mississippi State.
All right. And Mark, I gotta ask you, did you come into my house while I was sleeping? Because the way you read it is the same way I had it too.
Oh, the 5 that I listed?
Yes.
Okay. Great minds, Michael.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, the team that surprised you most, being at work to halfway point in the season, team that's overestimated or under what's the word? Overestimated, surprised you, the team that's surprised you that's not doing so good this year so far.
Oh, the most disappointing team.
Yeah. Overachieving and underachieving.
The overachieving team would be overachieving. I really like what Washington State's done. They've got a nice win against Wisconsin. They have a pretty dominant win against Oregon State. That was a very strong game that they played against a really good Oregon State team. So Washington State, off the top of my head, would be on the plus side, followed by West Virginia would be in there as well. And then on the downside, disappointment, Pitt is a major disappointment. They lost to Virginia Tech by 3 scores. They've lost all 4 of their Power 5 games, and most of those games have not been against extremely good teams. So Pitt is the first one that comes to mind as a disappointment. Yeah, I'm going to keep it right there with Pitt. I'm not thinking of anybody. I think Minnesota's played poorly, but I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of Minnesota, but I expected them to be better than they are. They've been pretty bad as well.
Oh, and how surprised are you that Jeff Brom is having a decent season like Scott Satterfield last year at Louisville? What's made the difference, you think?
Well, Jeff Brom is just first of all, he's one of the best offensive minds in football. Secondly, he showed us at Purdue what kind of leader he is. I just think he's a well-organized guy who knows how to build a program, can evaluate what the problems are, what the issues, and how to get better. Scott Satterfield seems to be kind of all over the place with his direction. And so I consider that to be a significant upgrade for Louisville. And I said that at the moment that they signed Jeff Brom.
Yeah, another thing I'm trying to figure out is they're actually playing defense in Louisville. They're 37th in total defense. How much better is the defense compared to when he was at Purdue? It has to be lights out better, but what's the difference with the defense? I like when he was at Purdue.
Well, I will have to ask you this question. This one goes back to you. Did he take his defensive coordinator with him to
I'm pretty
Louisville?
sure he took everybody with him, yes.
Well, was that the same guy that took over the initial season at
No.
Purdue?
Ron English? No, I think he's the one that came in a couple years ago and stuff, so.
Who was the coordinator that they first brought in that really turned it around?
Well, you had Mark Hagan, but I'm trying to think. Then he left. And I'm trying to think who it was for a while and stuff. I'm pretty sure it was Mark Hagan, but then he left and then came back. But I'm trying to think who it was because you also had the coach from Marshall last year too.
Yes, that's a good point.
But I'm trying to think who it was because I think Mark was only there a year that he left after the 2017 season. I have to go back and look.
So let's watch Louisville play Notre Dame. And Notre Dame does not have a prolific offense, explosive offense, but they do have an efficient offense with a tremendous quarterback, offensive line, and running game. And they may really pound Louisville.
Yeah, it was Nick Holtz who you're thinking of.
Yes, that's who I'm thinking of. That took over, and they got so much better that first bowl season when they beat Arizona and Khalil Tate. Yes, they were so much improved on defense just immediately.
Yeah, and then they had a couple down years and stuff like that.
Who was that big D tackle on that team that was a wrecking ball?
Oh, my brain's kind of. I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of it. He played Quan Short. Keyone Short.
Yes, good job.
Yep, and I'm not sure if he's still in the NFL or not, but no. Most of Jeff's coaches went with him to Louisville, so and stuff like that. No, I was wondering, is there a chance that if they get past past Notre Dame next Saturday night, or is it this Saturday they play?
This Saturday.
If they get past Notre Dame, can they end up 12-0?
Well, the odds are stacked against them, just the probabilities, but they do have the most likely. They have the easiest schedule in the conference, and I said that before the season started. No Clemson, no Florida State, and I believe no North Carolina.
No North Carolina either.
Yes.
Here's the remaining games. They got Notre Dame, Pitt, Duke, Virginia Tech, Miami, and Virginia.
Yes. So Pitt's not nearly as good as we thought they were going to be. Duke is somewhat better, although Riley Leonard is in
he done for the
question.
season?
We don't know that he's out for the season, last I saw, but he's going to be out at least about 3 weeks. Let's I'm going to look this up and see if there's any new information on Riley Leonard. That's a good question. And then who else is in there? Virginia Tech, Virginia,
and Miami.
Well, Miami's going to be a difficult game on the road, I believe.
And then, of course, they ended the season with Kentucky.
Yeah, so they still have a difficult schedule. It was more, to me, not that they didn't have overall, they have a pretty difficult schedule with Kentucky and Notre Dame, and they've already played Indiana outside the conference has been their one out of conference game thus far, but it was more their in-conference schedule. They got a huge break in conference.
Mm-hmm. That's just kind of like Purdue got the huge break last year.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking the worst, maybe 10-2 for Louisville this year.
At worst?
Or, I mean, at best.
Oh,
No,
at
well,
best.
you can't say really at best because at best would be 12-0. But I'm trying to think, are they in the coastal or are they in the Atlantic?
There is no such thing anymore. It's just
Oh,
all
so they
1 through
went to
14.
division.
Yes. No
All right.
divisions.
But so I'm just trying to think if somehow Florida State, North Carolina, and Louisville, who would it be? 'Cause I'm trying to think. I know Florida State's like what, 4th in the country?
Well, that has nothing to do with the conference standings.
Oh, I thought they went based on rankings and stuff. Who's the highest ranked teams and stuff?
No.
Okay, I was just wondering.
No. They go by the record, of course,
Mhm.
the in-conference record. Then number 2, they go by any head-to-head. And then
Okay.
then there's a series of, and I went through this when I did my predictions because I had 3 conference races end in ties that I had to go through the tie-breaking system.
Mhm.
But it's a whole conglomeration of common opponents and so forth.
Yeah, not bad. No, I was just wondering. All right, sir. I get you. I took too much of your time. I will try to catch you Friday night.
All right, Michael.
See
Appreciate you
ya.
being
Have a
here.
great show. See ya.
You too. Bye-bye. Yes, the ACC tie-breaking system, we're not going to go through that. I should have it memorized because I did look at it enough a month ago to try to determine. Each conference is similar, but they're not exact in how they do it because, number one, you've got divisions to deal with, let's say in the Big Ten and elsewhere, but you do not in the Big 12 or the ACC or the Pac 12 now. So the tie-breaking system is a bit different. It deals more with common opponents than it does with and strength of schedule. That's what it came down to. When I went through all my predictions in the Power Five and then was like, oh, I've made this tough on myself. I got a 3-way tie here. I got a 3-way tie there. I got a 3-way tie over there. I had to go through it, and it turned out to be winning percentage, meaning the team with the most difficult schedule within the conference is what it turned out to be. And for Louisville, that should not be very high. Should not be very high. All right. Well, we're going to go through these comments. I've left the link there in the chat if you want to give me a call here to talk college football. We don't have to talk Big Ten. I know all the bullet points on the tweet that went out were Big Ten related. And maybe some of you are going to come at me. I've had a few comments recently about being the voice of the Big Ten. Don't want to be the voice of the Big Ten. It sways in that direction for a few different reasons because that's what you guys are watching. So I will deliver analysis on anything, but our analysis today, the videos that we delivered today, Oklahoma, Texas preview, Alabama, Texas A&M preview. Those were the 2 videos posted today. We got the real MVP checking in tonight. What's going on?
Hey, Mark, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know, today is just another day that ends in Y, which means Kentucky once again got another player Michigan was trying to go after in the recruiting game, Mark.
They did.
Maybe if Michigan wants to win a national championship, they can not have the recruits and prospects taken away by the Kentucky Wildcats. I mean, they've lost 3 recruits or targets in 2 weeks to the University of Kentucky, Mark. I mean, what type of downward spiral is this for Michigan?
Okay. Well, let's be accurate here. So we did have the 2 brothers. So they came as a package deal. So Mark Stoops flipped them together. And then today, now was this a player that was apparently going to Michigan, or he was just on their list and they were on his list?
At first it seemed like he was going to Michigan, but then as Vince Marrow, the recruiting coordinator, worked his magic, it leaned toward Kentucky. He's from Ohio, so he's out of a state player. But at the end, he was projected to go Kentucky, but he made an official, and he's a 4-star player. So, you know, I'll take my W's where I can get them, Mark.
Is this Terrion Nichols?
No, it's Brian Robinson.
Oh, okay. Brian Robinson plays off the edge in Westerville, Ohio. So Westerville, Ohio is just outside of Columbus. So I don't know if Ohio State is passing on him, but he is a top 200 player, 12th rated at his position, and is the 7th rated player in the state of Ohio. Not bad.
Thank you, Mark. I mean, I saw your Michigan podcast. Well, not yours, Steve Dace's Michigan podcast that you appeared in. When you brought up those recruiting rankings, you could literally see the fluster in Steve's face. It's like, oh my goodness, Mark asked a question that's going to be difficult to answer. And then, he did the normal thing that all the Michigan fans do. He didn't argue against the stats. He just argued against the formula. Listen, I don't care what formula 24/7 Sports uses. If they've got something going on where 9 straight years it's happened, odds are it's a pretty reliable stat.
I completely agree. The only question I have, though, is obviously their chore has been made decidedly more difficult by the transfer portal. And we have yet to see whether their formula still works in the transfer portal era.
Exactly. But early indications are it's going to work because the transfer portal was implemented yet last year, the year before, and the trend has still continued, Mark. So early indications is talent still matters. Having the best recruiting classes still matters. And until it changes, I'm not going to change my opinion, Mark. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, there's no reason for you to change your opinion. And I really, outside of Alabama losing to Texas, I don't know if this season is as topsy-turvy as everybody makes it out to be. I get the optics are that this is just this zany, unpredictable season, and that 12 or 15 different teams could win a national championship. But outside of Texas going to Bama, winning that game, none of the usual teams have lost any games or really been threatened. So I don't know that it's as topsy-turvy as, again, the optics would say.
Completely agree with you. And Mark, Texas is one of the top 6 teams in recruiting. So even if they win the national championship, that still falls perfectly in line with the stat. Or, if Alabama loses this week to Texas A&M, guess what? They're in the top 5 in recruiting. So it would fall within the stat. So even if Alabama were to lose this week, it wouldn't be shocking or surprising if you look at the ratings.
Yeah, somebody has to lose that game. And I think I'm looking more and more forward to that game too, as being a really competitive, good game.
Exactly. I mean, I think Texas A&M should. I expect Texas A&M to win. Alabama only being a 2.5-point favorite. I mean, when's the last time that has happened? It's got to be a while back ago, Mark. I mean, that line tells me something about the game itself.
Yeah, against the team that's already lost a game. That is a telling line. And we shall see. I don't expect many points to be on the board. I think there'll be some reasonable scoring. It's not going to be an Iowa-type game, but I would expect a score in the low 20s. We talked to a Georgia guy today, DeReal, and we'll talk to our Kentucky guy tomorrow. Do you have a level of confidence going to Athens?
I mean, anything can happen. Miracles do happen. Outside of that, no. I saw the opening line was like 17 points, and I thought, well, there goes all over. It's going to be a tall task. Georgia's got a heck of a team. Devin Leary has honestly kind of been disappointing to me this year. I was expecting him to be a much better of the football, throwing the football than he has. Dane Key, I don't know what his issues are, but he's clearly in a sophomore slump. Kentucky wide receivers aren't helping him out dropping the football. And Kentucky, I don't think is going to have nearly the success of running the ball as they did on Florida. But I expect Kentucky to lose this game like 24-14 type game. So,
okay.
But, there's no moral victories in the South, Mark. So,
and there are elsewhere?
Well, I mean, I hear Ohio State fans bragging about being one field goal away from winning the national championship or being one injured player away from winning the national championship. Or I hear Michigan fans celebrating their win against Bowling Green and UNLV and making up stats that they scored by this amount and they hold their opponents to this amount. Therefore, they're going to win the national championship because the last two teams who have done it have won the national championship. So
I tend to think, I can't come up with any specific examples right this second, but I tend to think that other fan bases would make the same claims. The second one that you brought up about Bowling Green and UNLV and those clowns versus the first one, those are two very different arguments to me. We're talking about a playoff game that went down to a final kick versus how bad did you beat Bowling Green and East Carolina. To me, those are two different levels of argument. But no, Georgia won the national championship. They completed the game. But what do we do on here? We get on here every day and we discuss, we debate, we analyze. That's what we do. And there's a difference. If you're just looking for wins and losses, then you just need the internet to look up the games. But if you're trying to get and make a point about the performance and how good the teams are, then it matters that they lost on the final kick of the game versus losing 45-10.
I mean, it would have mattered if it was a regular season game, but it was the final game of the season. As far as I know, Ohio State got eliminated. They didn't hang a banner for it. They didn't go to a consolation prize game. So honestly, it didn't matter how they lost, because if they lost 56-10 or 43-42, they still would have been eliminated, if I am correct about that, which maybe I'm not.
No, you are correct. But that holds true during the middle of the season as well.
See, that's where I disagree with you, because there's more games, there's more data points, and the committee has shown they're able to take one-loss teams to the playoffs. So, yes, like your Ohio State team that lost to Purdue, if it was closer, I think they would have been in the playoff that year.
True. Okay, you're taking that in another direction, but it's still a win or a loss. Yes, regardless of the score.
Right. All I'm saying is style points matter much more in the regular season than in the postseason. Yeah. So,
yes.
That's all I got for you, Mark, tonight. Fight on.
Thanks, DeReal. Appreciate you being here. Voice of College Football, breaking it down with all of you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. Why? Your contribution, folks. Your contribution. Your engagement. We will check out the comments there in the chat. Leave us a super chat to stand out, or Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App is the best way actually to contribute directly if you would like to support us in that way. Certainly hit the like button if you enjoy the conversation that we provide and the videos. As mentioned, Texas A&M Alabama preview is out. And also Oklahoma, Texas. That preview is out. And we will have a Kentucky, Georgia preview. And who knows what else. But, you know, I run out of week. That's the issue. I would preview every game in the world, but we kind of run out of a week. And with all these team channels we work on, we are doing our best to kind of clear the deck with these team channels and make sure that they run a little bit more efficiently. That way I can get on here more often on the main channel and deliver some analysis and some great discussion with all of you. Check out the conversation we had the other day with Steve Dace of Michigan Podcast. Speaking of which, so every Tuesday, Steve and I get together on Michigan Podcast. So I would encourage you to check that out. Certainly, if you're a Michigan fan, that's a great destination to be. If you're a Big Ten fan, great destination to be. Love college football. Hey, so that's all of you. Get on over there to Michigan Podcast. However, every Tuesday, I certainly am grateful that Steve deems me worthy of jumping on his show And each and every Tuesday, typically each week. And I'm looking for the episode from this week. That must have been it right there. Look, fine looking guy right there. Okay, so let's check out the comments because I don't do this enough. This might be a little bit better cross promotion, actually, checking out what they have to say over here on Michigan Podcast. We shall see what they've got. So I've looked at this already to a certain extent. I looked at some of the comments. And obviously, not all of them are going to pertain to me, but this is always fun. This is kind of similar to a few weeks ago when we were on. Well, first we had John Kennedy from Always Irish here, and he let me know that a large portion of his audience wasn't too happy with me. They either had no idea who I was and said this Ohio State guy or this voice of college football guy or wherever, he's saying this, and that about Notre Dame, or they knew who I was and they also took exception to what I had to say, usually not really taking into account what I did have to say and making things up. All right, so we got James here, and man, let's make this easier on me. Stand by. It wouldn't even help if I had my contacts in. James says, I'm a Michigan fan, but I love Mark. Oh, man, this guy's great. Love this guy, James here. He brings great analysis, and I watch his channel a lot and got 13 likes under there. So hopefully those Michigan fans are making their way over here. So thank you for that, James. All right. I'll stop patting myself on the back now. All right. We've got Bishop Probert. We've got Brad James, who says, Bo's ghost is smiling down on Harbaugh. Woody's ghost is smiling down on Day. This year's game. It is a game, right? You don't have to put that in quotes. They are playing a game. This year's game is going to be epic. Andre, Mark, you hit the nail on the head. Michigan now has the program and staff we've been chasing, getting the right people and players that work best. Work best together, not just chasing the most talented. Well, Andre, thank you for that. The man down the hall, Mark is so patient when he gets interrupted. Yes, Steve knows that. He interrupts me. That's just him. He's just got too much in his brain, too much between his ears. He's thinking, when will that Rogers guy shut up so I can like spouse some real knowledge here? No, Steve and I have a great time, and I appreciate Steve. You guys realize this watching some people. Some people just have the gift of gab. That's all there is to it. I am not one of those guys. Can I talk? Hopefully I can. There's a reason I'm sitting here and that some people listen to me, but I'm not the type guy that has the gift of gab. The gift of gab kind of guy, you could say, describe that doorknob over there, and they could talk for 45 minutes. I would just basically say, well, it's a doorknob and it's gold. And that would be the end of it, because I would just spit out the nuts and bolts of the situation. Great analysis as always. We had some people slam me here at some point. Rick, Mark Rogers shows a lot of patience as Steve Days demonstrates how to dominate the conversation. Where is it? Joseph says, I agree with Steve and Mark's takes on the topics of this podcast. However, I believe that Michigan needs to recruit the high 4 and 5 stars when it comes to the skill positions. Scarlet Lock I6315. That's very nice of you. Mark and Steve is an elite duo. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Come on. Somebody's going to slam me here. There we go. Let's start with Hassler247. By the way, tell Mark to screw off with his asinine top 25 that makes sense. Okay. This is the first obvious point to all of this, is that I guarantee that 90+% that have an issue with my top 25 that actually makes sense is because I'm not ranking their team high enough. I guarantee that is 90+% of the comments that we get, the negative comments, have to do with just on this particular ranking. I did not rank, in this case, Michigan high enough. They think it's a asinine top 25, even though probably at points last year when I ranked Michigan as high as anyone or higher at other times than anyone, then it was good. It made sense. But then it doesn't make sense because it's Michigan. I don't care how much supposed logic he is putting into this. There is no way you can justify putting Michigan as the 18th best team. Absolutely, there is justification for it. If we had no benchmark of what happened last year, no talent evaluation, and just the teams went out there and played 5 games, I would have absolutely every right and justification to rank them 18th because they haven't played anybody. If you want to argue 3rd, 4th, 5th, fine, but look at the deeper analytics and you see why this team is so good, not to mention that they make so few mistakes. That's saying a lot. And of course, they will. Hassler, thank you that you do like me. I appreciate you coming back with that. That for the record, I like Mark, but that segment is dumb. I apologized to somebody the other day because I said, I apologize that we just sometimes produce content that's higher level thinking. Oh, I thought we had some other ones. There we go. Caden comes in. Mark Rogers, your bias is showing again. Okay. I know this is common. You and I and everyone knows dang well Michigan ain't the 14th best talent. Top 3 at worst, probably top 2. Ridiculous. You're saying that out of jealousy and bias. All right. So first of all, the jealousy comment, I don't run a football team. I'm not a coach of a football team. I don't take part in the university in any such way. So I have no reason to be jealous of any football teams. I don't play football. I don't play or coach football. So why would I be jealous of guys that coach and play football? That's not what I do. All right. The really moronic part of all this, please spell my name correctly. The real moronic part of all this is that this is not my talent ranking. This has been compiled by 247 Sports. Go argue with 247 Sports. I simply cited a few facts here. The fact is, according to the 247 Sports rankings, Michigan has the 14th most talented team in the country. Does Michigan, in fact, have the 14th most talented team in the country? I don't know. Do you know what? Nobody knows. God knows. That's the only person that knows that if that is truly accurate. However, what we do know is that based on these talent evaluations and rankings by 247 Sports, that no team in the double digits in the rankings has won a national championship. That was simply my point, that after 9 years of playoffs, that a team ranked that low in the talent rankings has won a national championship. That is a fact. I'm not saying that that's going to continue this year. I didn't say that it's going to continue into the future. I simply stated after 9 years, no team that has been ranked this low in the talent rankings has won a national championship. So, Caden, number one, understand how to frame an argument and understand who your target should be. Your target is 247 Sports. As somebody once said, don't shoot the messenger. And I guess that's it. So, anyway, just with my appearance most weeks, not every week, most weeks on Michigan Podcasts, I was curious to see the folks that are mostly Michigan fans, I'm sure, chiming in on Michigan Podcast and what they had to say about yours truly. All right, let's get to the comments. Keep in mind that we've got a pack show coming up. That's at 10:30 Eastern. Mike, you're right. None of those names look familiar. Those folks should be over here talking college football with us. We're here all the time talking college football. They've not made it over here. Okay. Moose. Okay. Name 14 teams better than Michigan right now. I'll wait. You're missing the point. We didn't say, nobody said that there were 14 teams better than Michigan. I just received a phone call. I don't know if you were here for it, where I was asked to name the 5 top teams in the country, and I named Michigan. So I guess I will resign myself to the fact that there's just going to be a portion of my viewership that is never going to understand this top 25. I'm going to try again, nevertheless. It's based on who you played, how good they are, and it's based on the performance on the field. It's based on those 3 things. So Michigan's dominance portion of that, the number 3 portion of that has been extremely high. I'd have to go around the country to figure out how high, but it might be number 1. They might be number 1 at the position number 3, the performance standpoint, or at least the performance against those crappy teams. And the number 1 criteria, the wins and losses, they are tied with how many teams are undefeated now? We're probably at about 15, right? Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Maryland, Florida State, North Carolina, Louisville, Duke, not Duke, Notre Dame, not Notre Dame, 7. Somebody else in the ACC, maybe not. Georgia, Kentucky, Texas, Oklahoma, Washington State, Oregon, USC, that's 15. Is that 15? 15 teams in the country in the Power 5. Undefeated, something like that. Okay. Yeah. So there are 15 teams tied for number one if you just base it on wins and losses. 15 are tied for number one. Okay, out of the 15 I just listed, I would say all of them have played a more difficult schedule than Michigan. All of them. And that's my second criteria. And it's basically weighted 1, 2, and 3. They're not equal parts. They're generally that sliding scale. And number 3, Michigan's played extremely well. 22 FBS teams undefeated. We got James Madison included in there and others. Christopher has Michigan number 1. So what that tells me is that once Christopher starts his YouTube channel, I'm going to lose a ton of Michigan viewers to Christopher. Although I don't know that you want to see his all-time rankings from what I've seen. Yes, 15 tied for number 1 in the Power 5, if I counted those correctly. Thank you, Mike. And if you care at all about my rankings, which I hope you do, but you shouldn't care too much, it's all going to be fine for the Michigan fan. It's going to work out just fine. Just keep winning games. Even before you play Penn State, I would guess that by the Penn State game, if Michigan is 9-0, they'll be in the top 3 or 4. Not because of anything great that they've done, beating Minnesota and Purdue and Indiana, but everyone else is going to be losing games. And that is going to damage their resume. Now, if they lose to really good teams, and they win close games or lose close games, then they may stay ahead of Michigan. For example, if Team A is number 15 in the country and Team B is number 16 in the country, and let's say you agree with that ranking, Team A is number 15 entering this weekend, and Team 16, Team B is 16, A is 15, Team B is 16, and Team A beats some crappy team in the group of 5 by 17 points. Nondescript game, 20 points, whatever. A team that might be the 100th team in the country. That's team number 15. The 16th ranked team in the country, they play the number 1 team in the country. They lose by a field goal. You know what most people do in rankings? They drop the number 16 team. They drop them. They penalize them for losing to the number 1 team in the country, performing well. I don't. I consider that to be a strong performance. I'm not going to credit it anywhere close to the level of defeating the number 1 team in the country, but they just played with the number 1 team in the country. Let's take this super chat, and then I'll point out something else that drives me crazy about the rankings that makes absolutely no sense. And I could go on a 3-hour tirade about rankings. James, really the only right way to do rankings is to rank everyone. Every team in the country should be ranked. Why do the rankings stop? There is obviously an evaluation of everyone. If you're going to do rankings correctly, then there would be an evaluation of everyone. Therefore, if there's an evaluation, so all the teams that you're ranking, you are also evaluating their opponents, or you can't rank them. So if you're evaluating all their opponents, then you are generally ranking everyone. So you should have a ranking of everyone. And you may ask, Mark, why don't you rank every team? For me, it's simple time. It's a time issue. I'm not going to spend 10 hours ranking every team in the country, produce a video that makes $3. That just doesn't make business sense. But if I had the time to do it and the resources, I would rank every team in the country. I would have a rankings 1 through 133. Why does it stop? James, thank you so much for the contribution, James. We appreciate it. Go Blue! Ryan Day, the wannabe Just for Men model, doesn't stand a chance. He might become the first human ever to overdose on hair dye. Yuck. So throughout human history, has there ever been a human to overdose on hair dye? I don't know. That might be something that's been recorded somewhere as a cause of death. So he may not be the first. I don't know that that's been verified. And the Just for Men model. So that seems to be, maybe we'll do that sometime. We'll do this in the off season. We'll go through every coach in the country. You know what? We won't do this because this would be mean spirited. So I was about to do it. I gave it a thought there for about 3 seconds, but no, we don't do things like that. It would be fun in a way. Go through every coach in the country and point out every idiosyncrasy and make fun of each coach in the country. Every individual can be made fun of. I can be made fun of. You can be made fun of. We all can be made fun of. Even the best looking person in the world, they can't be made fun of for that. But then if you got to know them, then you could make fun of them for other things. So we can all be made fun of for some reason. So I'm thinking that to be made fun of something, the tint or darkness of your hair or beard, I'd feel pretty good about that. Like if that was the biggest shot anyone could take to my character, intelligence, my level of integrity, those things, and the best that they could do was make fun of the color of my hair, I'd feel pretty good about that. That actually should be a, I think that's going to be a next tweet, or maybe that'll be a short, that Ryan Day, he should take great pride in that. This is the great knock on him as an individual, that his beard is too dark. Ryan, it's too damn dark. You're a horrible individual. You're a horrible person. How dare you use Just for Men? Are you the only person on the planet in the United States your age that is using that product? You are by yourself, keeping that company alive, keeping them in business, because how dare you use a product? I can't imagine that there's anybody that's going to watch this video, watch this live stream, that uses any type of product to enhance their looks in any such way. My hair, for as good or awful as it looks, wherever you would rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, this is just how I wear it. This is how I've pretty much always worn it. This is how it goes. The last time I was at the hair cutting salon, whatever it's called, the lady made a comment about my hair and said, "Yeah, just kind of falls that way. That's the way it. I'm trying to cut it maybe differently, but that's the way it goes." I said, "Yeah, it's been trained like that forever." My mom probably cut it and combed it like that, and then I just continued it. I don't know. I remember when I was in high school, the big trend when I was in high school, and this is going to date me, was to comb your hair. Like, I have school pictures somewhere in some box. I have school pictures of the entire class, like in 5th grade, 6th grade. You know, those pictures where you got everybody's little picture on the picture card when you got your little pictures. Remember picture day at school? You go get you line up in front of the little cloudy picture that would show the nice little clouds in blue background, and you'd dress up nice and you'd get your picture taken. It was picture day at school, of course. You know, you'd have that. You'd have to check the box. Are you going to get the large? That's going to cost like $19.99, which back in that day was like, oh man, that's a fortune. My mom's never going to go for that. Or the $10.99 or the $7.99, whatever they were. But then you get your pictures back, and you get the picture of the whole class. Well, for years and years and years, every boy in my school parted their hair down the middle, and then like that, and then I never parted my hair down the middle. I always parted my hair on the side. You guys just didn't bargain for this when you clicked on here at the Voice of College Football, did you? Okay, yeah, just for men. So yeah, I got some hair gel right now, I guess, because I've got some hair gel in, that I too am taking part in increasing the hair product industry in America. And that makes me too a horrible person. But James, thank you so much for the contribution there. Very nice of you. Very nice of you. David, nice to know that Mark cares more about his hair than football. You know what, David? I actually do care more about my hair than football. Anything connected to myself, yes. My family, myself, yes, I do. I do care more about that than football. I do. Yes, Manny wants the link. He's like, I got to straighten out Mark and talk some football here. Yes. You know what? This has actually happened where we have been blamed and criticized for talking about football too much, because we talk about football more than anybody. I guarantee that. I guarantee there is more football content on our little channel than anywhere. Oh man, Mike is taking shot at redheads. What have I done here? Subtle red. Oh man, I'm having too much fun reading the comments here. Christopher needs a haircut. I'm right at the point right now where I'm okay. I'm all right. Probably for another 10 days to 2 weeks. And then it just hits me one day. This hair's driving me nuts. I got to get it cut. And I hate to wait for a haircut. I refuse to wait for a haircut. I call ahead. I set up an appointment. But if I go down and they get like 3 people in front of me, I'm like, nope, gone, bye. So I don't do that. The book fair. Yes, the book fair. When I became a sports fan, suddenly that book fair, boy, I tell you, my teacher, I remember in 5th grade, would have to put a restriction on me of how many sports books I could read. He would not let me read, after I read, Major League Baseball stars of 1978 and NFL stars of 1978 and He's like, okay, these aren't real books for one thing. They're just player profiles. All right, here we go. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We've got Chris on the line. Chris, how you doing?
Good. Good.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you. What's up?
I couldn't hear you. I didn't know if you were getting through or not. Again, I don't want to. You already kind of told me about this already, and I don't want to. I don't think you like it when I keep bringing up the same thing over and over. But, and I don't really think there's a wrong way to evaluate anybody. I think there are a few people maybe that were disappointed. Maybe I can't speak for anybody else. I mean, my guess would be that you represent the sport, so they want to see maybe their favorite team rated as high as possible. But I don't know. I guess I'd like a little. I mean, if you don't want to offer it, I mean, it's kind of confidential, I guess. But you kind of indicated that you look at the schedule, but I don't know. I guess the question I have, Mark, I think I don't know what to say except that I don't really understand how you can put. I mean, unless there. I mean, I'm sure there's basis for it because I know enough about you to kind of know how you are, but. I don't know that I would have Michigan as low as. Did you say you had them at 14? I really don't remember. I just
18.
Okay, well, I mean, there might in your mind. I'm sure there's a way to explain all that, but honestly, and again, I know what I do is just kind of my own thing, but after I did the math or whatever, I mean, I had Michigan number one, and it wasn't because I necessarily wanted to put them number one. That's just where I mean, now you can say whatever you want to say about it, but I think it was partly because of who they played. So it wasn't like I did it in spite of what they, and I really don't think that what I do really factors in the margin of victory that much. I mean, I'm sure it enters into it to some degree. So it's not really based on that. So I think it might actually be about who they played.
Okay, let me take this in. So you have Michigan number one, which I have no issue with.
Well, that's just where they finished.
Until you then explained why Michigan is number one, and you're telling me that if they would have won all those games 21-20, that they would still be number one.
Well, in all fairness, Mark, I think I've tried to explain this to you once before, and it's like I don't know that I can really do it anyway. But I don't know to the extent that the margin of victory really enters into it, because I'm only partly responsible for what I take the information from Sports Reference. So it's like, I don't know to what extent they use margin of victory. So you'd almost have to ask them. But my guess would be, not really knowing, is that I'm sure it's part of it, but I really don't think it's that.
It has to be.
Okay,
there is no way that anyone can have Michigan ranked number one in the country right now against that schedule and not take margin of victory into account.
Well, that's what I'm not sure about, Mark. But, in all fairness, I know Oklahoma, for example, beat Arkansas State like 78-0 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't really have Arkansas State ranked that very low. I mean, after, I guess it's, it's all about perspective, I guess. But for a team that got beat 78-0, I mean, they aren't like at the bottom part of it. I mean, they're actually, So I guess kind of what I'm trying to tell you is, I mean, I don't know the extent to which it would be them doing it, not me, because I don't use margin of victory in my calculations. But if they do, it would affect it. But I honestly think it's at least partly about the quality of opponents. That's kind of why, you can say whatever you want to about who they've played, but like Bowling Green, I guess. But and I guess Nebraska, not being the greatest. I mean, I'll admit that. I think everybody kind of knows that. But they're not playing like lousy teams, though. At least I don't think so. I don't know if you agree with that, but
by lousy,
well, I don't know.
You mean what?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at it from my perspective, which I know isn't quite the same as yours, and I'm not even saying that it should be. But, for example, I think I tried to post because you referenced it, so I thought, well, maybe people want to see the top 10 or whatever. And again, that's not really about me either. But I have to take the numbers that are available and I have to kind of make use of them. But Nebraska ranks really high on that list. I mean, they're not number one, obviously, but so I don't know if that enters into Sports References, sort of thing, maybe to where it's like maybe they're using a top. I mean, I really don't know what they use, but so the quality of opponent might reflect that to some degree, and so they might look at Nebraska differently than you do. And so my guess would be, not really knowing, is that they might give a different value, I guess, to the teams that Michigan's been playing so far. I mean, ordinarily, I think if you beat Nebraska, you're beating a pretty good team. Maybe not this year, but.
Well, that's what we're talking about this year.
Well, I understand, but I guess my point is, it's like, I think you even told me once, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said something about, I think it was in reference, because I keep bringing it up, is probably why you did it, like 1984 when Brigham Young played what you consider to be and I think I kind of showed, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, I kind of did another evaluation of the schedule, and, in all honesty, none of the teams they played were very good, but none of them were all that bad either. I mean, it's like, it's kind of what you want to look at, I guess, if you want to look at it glass half empty, glass half full. I mean, I don't know what to say about it, but
let's do one thing tonight, Chris. Let's stay on point, and we're going to be focused, and we're going to stick to this Michigan ranking.
I'd like to bring the team into it, if you don't mind, because I attended the school, Colorado State. I know that's not the first team that somebody thinks about is like, oh, we played, I know, for example, I think Michigan, and I think it's relevant. They played them last year. I know it was a year ago. And I think they beat them.
That has nothing to do with this season.
Well,
let's stay on point. Let's stay focused. This season, Michigan is ranked number one in your proficiency rating. Why?
Well, again, like I said, I'm only partly responsible for what. I mean, to the extent to which it is used, I guess, is maybe entirely mine. But the data that I plug into the numbers that I use isn't necessarily anything that I've developed. I mean, I can't take credit for any of it. But anyway, after I use what I think is the right thing, it spits out number one. I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, that's just what it does.
I think there's something that we have a miscommunication on. when I call teams bad or lousy or whatever terminology I'm meaning in reference to everyone else. So, meaning when there are 133 teams, somebody has to be the best, somebody has to be the 10th best, the 50th best, the 110, the 130. So,
Sure.
obviously, those teams that are near the bottom of the rankings, I'm not disrespecting the coaches or athletes that go out there and play, but
Okay.
in relation to the other teams, they aren't good.
But Division I football, though, Mark. I mean, I don't know. At some
Yes.
point,
So in relation to the other teams, they're not good. That's just a merit-based world.
okay.
And this is what this is. It's a meritocracy. So if you're Virginia and you're 0-5, you're not good.
But they're not entirely bad either. I watched them play, I think, part of a game against, was it Boston College? And they didn't look that bad to me. I mean, I didn't watch the whole game, but, they were competitive against what I think is a relatively,
Okay, Boston College is horrible too.
Okay, well,
So
if that's the case, then they are
this
bad
is
then.
the point I'm making, is that somebody has to be good and somebody has to be bad when you're playing a competitive sport.
Well, maybe, I mean, I'm not trying to be too critical of you, Mark, but maybe you could use different words. I mean, because I think it would I think it would upset somebody. Like, just pretend I didn't really play any sports, but let's just pretend that I did, because I was terrible. I wouldn't want to be told I was on a bad team, even if that's the truth. But
yeah, I get your point. I don't know how else to talk around it. Yes, if we had a Virginia offensive lineman tune into tonight's show or something, I would feel bad that we're calling their team. I'm calling their team awful. But again, it's competitive sports. And so getting back to your point about Michigan's number one, they beat East Carolina. East Carolina's 1-4. We could go through who they've played. I guarantee they haven't played or beaten anyone any good. You've got Bowling Green.
Yeah.
Bowling Green had a nice little win against Georgia Tech this past week.
Okay.
And they beat UNLV, right? Yeah, Michigan beat UNLV.
Yeah, they beat them pretty good. They didn't they just didn't beat those teams. I think they beat them by like 25 points, maybe, or 30, maybe even 30.
Yeah, which I was making the point a few minutes ago that I understand you or anybody else ranking Michigan that high with the scores being taken into account. How much did you win by? Did you win decidedly? Did you dominate the other team? And you told me that the scores weren't even factored into it.
I don't do it that way, but I guess what I'm trying to say, I think I tried to explain it to you, and maybe I don't know that you have the time to read everything I write, and probably just as well, really, because I don't know that I really offer anything that important. But one example that comes to my mind, and I've offered this more than once, it's when Colorado beat Nebraska 62-36, so they blew them out. Well, you know what? That's really not much difference from relative to the disproportion. It's really not that much different from being a team 3-2. I know that probably won't make sense to anybody, but there's some truth to that. So at some point, it's like, it doesn't really matter if you beat a team 50-4 or whatever. I mean, it's like, maybe in terms of like saying, yeah, we kind of like, I know, for example, when Ohio State beat Toledo last year, it was like 10 touchdowns or something like that. It wasn't like 7 or 8, it was like 10. But, at some point, it really doesn't matter. Well,
you're abusing math is what you're doing, Christopher.
Not really.
So if I'm following your last statement, you're basically saying that one team defeating another team 7-3 is the same as winning 70-30, because proportionately the numbers are the same.
Yeah.
No, if anyone who would make that statement or agree with that statement has never watched a football game in their life, that is not the same.
The value is almost the same. The value.
It's not the same.
Well, the value is, though. 3-2 is like 40 to, or what would it be? It was 62-36. So it's like 40
who would make that statement or agree with that statement definitely does not understand football.
Well, that's what you're saying about me then, because that's what I'm saying, which is fine. I mean, maybe you're right about that, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is, if Colorado had beaten Nebraska 3-2 instead of, what was it, 62-36, I mean, I don't see a whole lot of difference. I mean, maybe just for the fact that Chris Brown scored 6 touchdowns, I mean, yeah, you have to kind of weigh that into consideration. Well, we have a good player that can score 6 touchdowns. But, apart from that, I don't really know that there is a big difference. It's like you won the game, you beat the team you needed to beat. I don't know that beating them 60-40 is that much difference from beating them 3-2. That's just how I feel about it.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You can make up your own
Well,
mind.
you've made a math equation out of it that makes sense from the standpoint of just the extrapolation of the numbers. Yes.
Yeah.
But if a team defeats another team 7-3, they both scored once. One team was able to push the ball in the end zone. The other was not, but they got into field goal range and kicked a field goal. And for the entirety of that other 3.5 hours, they played to a stalemate on the scoreboard, as opposed to 70-30. One team is scoring 10 times. The other team is scoring 4 times.
Did Toledo score 30?
Huge, and also the difficulty and the work that has to be put in to drive the ball down the field to score that many times. There's no comparison between the two teams.
Well, I'm just kind of trying to kind of draw a line in the sand, Mark. That's all I'm trying to do. Yeah, I'm saying like 70-30 is like 7-3. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's exactly what I'm telling you. And I think in a way there's some truth to that. But because it's the value you assign, and it's roughly the same. But that's why I don't know if I'm just saying I don't know. I don't know that margin of victory is really that important.
I only have one other point to make, and then you can make a final point. Then we got to move on to some other calls.
Sure.
Okay. That would be like me offering the chat and saying, I will pay you $1 million a year, but you have to pay 10% tax. Or I will pay you $100 a year and you have to pay 20% tax. Which are you going to do?
Well, no, I mean, all I'm trying to do, Mark, is
would my response be, well, you people don't know what you're doing, because why would you take $1 million because you're paying and flip-flop the tax percentages because you're paying more of a percentage of tax? Well, obviously you take the higher dollar value, even though you're being taxed more.
Well, okay.
All right, Chris, final point.
What you got? Okay. Well, okay, good. I'm glad you're letting me do that. I appreciate it, Mark. Like I said, I really have no issue with the way you evaluate. I think you probably do a better job than almost anybody. And I'm not just saying that to, butter up to you or anything like that. I really do. So it's like, I guess maybe you might want to consider when you put something, and this isn't really a criticism, but when you put something out there, I hope it isn't just, well, today I'm just going to kind of throw something up in the air and see what sticks. I hope you put enough to where it's like, if you have Oklahoma or whoever it is, it doesn't really matter to me, rated number 1, I hope it's not just because that week you like Oklahoma better than maybe Missouri or, I guess I'm just kind of worried that, you might, you said something about wanting to evaluate every team, and I know that you could, and I'm sure that if you did, you'd do the best job you could and all that, but I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having Michigan as low as you do. It's just that some people might say, well, that means that Michigan isn't maybe, I think the real MVP said something that, I don't know if he still feels this way, but in a way, he's not really wrong. He said they had like less than 1% chance. Well, that's you could almost say that about any team, really. If the talent is spread evenly, which I know it isn't, but if it just pretend like for a minute that it was across the board, then every team would have less than 1% because there's more than 100 teams. So he's not wrong. It's just that I don't know how he arrives at that conclusion, though, that they have less than 1% chance. That's true for almost anybody. So it's like he's not really wrong. I don't really understand where he applied that to Michigan, that they have less than 1% chance of winning a championship.
Yeah. What you're saying applies to 90+% of the teams, but not to the other 8 or 9%.
Anybody. So he's not wrong, but it's like that assumes, I guess, that there's like an even distribution, which I think actually, in all fairness, I think we're getting closer to that. That's what's becoming kind of interesting. I think even like I'm not sure that
it is. All right, Chris, thank you for the call. I appreciate it.
All right, have a good day.
Thank you, Erica. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Dr. C.
Hey, how's it going, Mark?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I am doing well. Thanks for asking. All right. Well, I've just got my quick top 5 and some random questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right, so I've got my top 5. Number 1, Texas. Number 2, Georgia. Number 3, Penn State. Number 4, Michigan. And number 5, Alabama. And I was having a really hard time finding a number 5 because everyone has kind of had questionable wins, that were ranked higher than Alabama.
So how did you arrive at those rankings?
Well, I think Texas is so far the best team in the country because they beat Alabama, and they've got the defense. It looks like they're clicking on all cylinders. Georgia is still, number 2 because they are defending champions. I think they've got, despite the fact that they've had struggles, they still are probably the second best team in the country. I think those are the 2 top teams.
So let me ask you this, Dr. C. I'm not being critical. I'm just curious.
Sure.
So you are using last year's results to impact this year's rankings?
No.
You're
not for, well, with Georgia a little bit, but with Georgia would be the one team. Okay. I think Texas is clearly the best team in the country so far with who they've played and how they've performed.
Okay.
I think everybody else, it's still to be determined.
Yeah. And with Georgia, you cited that they won the national championship last year.
Yeah. And they've returned, talent, and obviously that's the one team that I still am kind of biased about that. Honestly, I would debate putting number 1 Texas, and I would probably put Penn State at number 2 so far.
So you're not trying to filter out your bias.
Yeah, as much as possible. Well, like I said, Georgia, until they lose, they're defending champions and they've returned some of that experience back. So, that's the one. That was the one team that I am putting bias.
So the only thing I'll say about that is if we are being completely fair, then if we treat the defending national champion in that way, then if a team is 3-9 the previous season, then they should have to earn their ranking more than other teams because we should be putting them. I don't agree with this, by the way, but we should be penalizing them. If we are elevating the national champion from the year before, teams that underperformed last year, we should be suppressing them, right?
No, I mean, I know where you're coming from, but at the same time, that team has it's like tradition.
Hello? Unfortunately, I believe we lost Dr. C. Dr. C, you there?
Seen with that bias, right?
We missed everything you just said after tradition.
Oh, okay. I said, team like Michigan, until they win a playoff game, are still going to have that bias, right? Georgia, because
then why would you put that bias in your own ranking? If you recognize that bias, why would you include bias in your ranking, like intentionally?
Well, because the reason that sometimes bias plays is because you've seen this story before, right? Where they look good against bad teams and then make the playoff and then choke, right? Same thing while you're rewarding Alabama. Alabama lost one game this season, but they're still Alabama. We know who they are. They have a track record, right? They have a coach that's going to...
These guys don't have a track record. The coach does.
The coach has a track record. Well, these guys, as far as their roster, right? Alabama's roster is as good as anyone's. So you take that in consideration. I have Bama
so
at
Texas
5.
A&M's.
Texas A&M's roster they had that once. Well, they had last season that was elite. The previous season, their recruiting wasn't great.
Is somewhere in that range.
Mm-hmm. But Alabama's roster is still better.
Okay.
It has more continuous top classes. So,
But
yes,
Texas A&M has a better roster than Florida State, so should they be ranked higher?
not because of the record, right?
They have the same record as Alabama.
The record is Alabama. Yeah, but Florida State has a win at LSU, and I don't know if Texas A&M is going to beat LSU this season. Well, yes, it's flawed. I think my system is flawed, but
Every system's flawed. I want
yeah.
to make that clear about my system too. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
Nobody has a perfect system, and that's actually impossible. Even if it's a computer, it's flawed because there's not enough results to accurately rank the teams, to completely accurately rank the teams. And since you are going to openly include bias, if I included bias, I'd rank Ohio State number 1 every week.
Yeah, well, to be honest, there's only the 2 teams that I really just see so far with how they've performed is Texas and Penn State. And I'm also putting the schedule, we could put Michigan in there, but because of their schedule, I'm not ranking them in that same category just yet.
Okay.
So those are the 2 teams to me so far and then everybody else, it's too early to tell. You can debate either way. USC undefeated. I think maybe the most explosive offense in the country.
Where did you have Florida State?
What's that?
Where did you have Florida State?
I was debating putting them at 6, but then again, look at the Boston College game.
You don't think Florida State has better wins than Penn State?
They may, but I mean that Boston College game, I can't get over. They beat Boston College by what, 2 points?
Yeah,
that's a horrid team. If you can't beat Boston College by more than 4 touchdowns, I don't know how you can be in the top. You can't be in the top 5.
Okay. You don't think that gets balanced out by beating Clemson and LSU, which is far better than anything?
Yeah. You know what? I'll put him in the top 10. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd put him in the top 10, but I might take him out. 31-29 against Boston College. I'd put you at 6.
Yeah. I have great respect for you, Dr. C. Love your calls all the time. But I think you are underlining the issue with most of these polls, and like one score stands out for most people that are looking at these games. That's almost always what happens when somebody debates my rankings, is they'll throw out like this one egregious score. And sure, that's part of the factor. That's a factor in 5 games, but that, whether it's a big win or a close win against a bad team or something like that, that seems to drive people's narratives. That drives people's narratives, and what happened last weekend seems to drive narratives. That's what I get pounded for. Almost all the examples are what happened last weekend.
Yeah, like, you're 1,000% correct, Mark.
There's all these other games that were played before this. So, no, but it's difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about it. It's difficult for me. It's difficult for anyone.
Absolutely. Okay, so that being said, I just had a couple quick questions for you.
Sure.
Okay, these are what I've got them down. Most disappointing team so far this season.
So I got asked this already tonight, and I said Pitt.
Yeah. You know what?
They're 0-4 against Power 5 teams. They won the ACC 2 years ago. They went 9-4 with a bowl win last year. They were supposed to be better. I thought they'd be better as well.
Yeah. Some people had them as a dark horse to potentially make the playoff. Biggest surprise team so far.
Biggest surprise team. I don't remember how I answered that. I think I said biggest surprise team. Man, if Duke would have beaten Notre Dame the other night, to me, see, this is how, again, I evaluate teams a little bit differently. What Duke did the other night, to me, is almost like a win. Like they came within one play of a win. So no, it technically wasn't a win, but so I'll say Duke and Washington State.
You know what? Yeah, I agree. Not so much with Duke because they were really good last year, and they're just as good. Well, they're better this year. But Washington State, yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, they have 2 really good wins.
And who's a coach that you think is going to be fired or on the hot seat that you've seen so far that might be a surprise to us?
Oh, we know coaches are going to get fired, so we just got to figure out who. Mike Gundy might be in more trouble than people think.
You know, I've seen some good names in the chat, and
Yeah, see,
Tom
people are
Allen.
probably coming up with better names than I am. I'm going blank here. Mike Gundy, Billy Napier. This is only his 2nd season, and he's recruiting out of his mind. Matt Campbell at Iowa State. Tom Allen, I think, is going to get fired for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Matt Campbell. I don't know about Matt Campbell. I think Iowa State would be good to keep him. I don't know that they're going to do any better than him.
Yeah, I think if he was a coach at some, you name it, a bigger university, but since it's Iowa State, I see them keeping him around. Some people,
Dana
of course, they're
Hogerson,
calling for
Houston. There's one. I think Dana Hogerson's going to get let go most likely this year.
Yeah, I think so. Some people are saying Kurt, Kurt over in Iowa. No, I think he's staying.
Yes, he's about the most secure coach in the country.
And the final question, so because my my bias will show here, but will USC win the Pac-12?
No, I'll take the
No.
field.
Who do you think it's going to be? Washington or Utah?
I picked Oregon in the preseason. Washington looks the best right now, but I picked although hey, they didn't play such a hot game at
Against Arizona, yeah.
This past weekend, but people like Washington. See, here's something right here. People have fallen in love with Washington, and I get it, but I think this is where they've got a quarterback. People love him. They love the numbers he posts. They haven't played anybody that's any good. Michigan State, Boise State, Tulsa, Arizona. So, but people love Washington. They've shown up all over the place as a quote unquote dark horse team, or they should be number 1. And yeah.
Herb Street said, and the Game Day show said that he had Washington at number 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Was this after the Arizona game?
No, I think
Okay.
no. I think that was right before the Arizona game. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I still don't agree with him, but I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my number 1 team has to have played somebody. I don't care how if Washington beat every team 60-0, they still wouldn't be number 1 for me because they haven't played anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. You know who I do feel for is Utah.
With Cam Rising, you mean?
Yeah, the lack of Cam Rising.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, they've been having a great season. They lost to Oregon State the other night, very close game. And I want to believe that if Cam Rising was in there, I think it would come down to Oregon and Utah to see who wins the Pac-12.
Yeah, you may be right. I think the Pac-12 race is the most fascinating of all the conferences.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a year where everyone looks beatable,
Yep.
So far, I think Texas is the one that I think Texas has been the standout for me, but everyone looks beatable. Georgia had trouble. It's looking offensively bad. Ohio State, offensive questions. What is it? Florida State can barely beat Boston College. Washington, who's, the darling, can barely beat Arizona. Is this a result of the transfer portal, you think, or NIL?
Well, it could be a one-off, but
Mm-hmm.
okay, a couple of things here. So I think you're right. I think it is the transfer portal. There are more veteran college football players out there than ever. There is somebody that put in for a 9th year, I saw the other day, for a 9th year of eligibility.
I saw that.
There are players all over the place that have 6 and 7 years of eligibility. So that has evened things out because the very elite players still leave the top teams and go to the NFL. They're not sticking around for 7 years. So
Mhm.
these lesser teams, and I mean lesser, I don't mean down in the dumps. I mean the second and third tier teams have more team players that are sticking around, more layers of those kind of players. And let's just wait and see. I'm not necessarily quite buying into this whole narrative that there's just 12 or 15 teams out there that can win a national championship.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, what you would have is, in the past, like a TCU, where they have a really good season because they were full of seniors,
Yep.
and it would come every like 4 years, right?
Yep.
But now, because of the transfer portal, I think that could be narrowed down to about every 2 years to 3, right? Building that depth, building that experience. So it's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be a lot. I don't think they'll become elite, these teams, but they're going to be a much more difficult road for these teams like a Georgia, who's going to be running into, these teams that are getting folks from the transfer portal. They're still going to be superior, but they're going to have a tougher time. The Ohio States and all the powers.
Yep. All right,
Um,
man. Well,
yeah.
thanks for the call. I appreciate it. We need to keep
Yeah,
moving
of
on
course,
here.
Mark. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
taking
Dr.
my
C.
call. Take
Appreciate
care.
it. All right. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. I would love to see somebody compare scores from this year to previous years. I just don't think it's quite as wacky as it appears to be. I think if Alabama had beaten Texas, then Alabama's undefeated, Georgia's undefeated, Ohio State's undefeated, Michigan's undefeated. Yeah, I don't just see these results being that crazy. I went through the first 5 weeks of the season and listed all the upsets. There aren't that. I think there are less upsets this year. There's only like 4 or 5 upsets. There are typically 4 upsets in the top 25 every week. There are only about 4 upsets taking all the games into consideration every week. All right. Welcome in, Landfound. How you doing?
I'm talking about all the way to the top. Oh, yeah. Unjustifiably in a position that I'd rather not be in, but the cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah, brother. Macho Man.
You don't scare my audience, please. You're not scaring me, but I'm afraid you're going to scare my audience away here.
Woo! The cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah. Mario Cristobal and the Miami Hurricanes are coming, brother. And we're taking names. And we're killing everybody. Because we got a hit list.
The names are on the jerseys.
Nebraska. Florida State. Georgia.
Nebraska.
Alabama. USC. Oh, yeah, brother. The cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah. Hey, Mark. Hey,
was that like a movie scene you were taking us back to?
Have you never seen the bit from Macho Man? The cream will rise to the top.
No, and
It's really
I'm going to do my best to avoid it.
Right. Hey, I was livid though that you where was Stanford on that top 10 list, sir?
Who?
Stanford on the bottom top 10.
They weren't there.
They were excluded.
They were excluded. I spared Stanford.
You want to bring history into consideration? The scholarship scandal that they have there, that wasn't taken into consideration, where they were giving out fake scholarships?
Okay, this is a discovery for everyone to make here. When we produce videos here, we do our very best, depending on the topic. The more serious the topic, the more I want to be accurate, and so forth and so on. I'm throwing together a little bottom 10, just kind of poking fun at some teams, pointing out some struggling teams, some struggling programs, the LSU defense, Virginia Tech, whoever it might be that we put in our bottom 10. No, this was not an exhaustive look at college football and precisely the very bottom 10, whatever. They weren't even teams. It wasn't even a bottom 10 list of teams. It was just kind of like storylines.
16-0 since taking over at Duke. Or not 16-0, I'm sorry. Whatever his record is since he took over, you want to talk about storylines, sir? Almost coming within a hair of beating Notre Dame?
It was a bottom 10 list.
I was livid. That Duke was on that list. And
Folks,
then, yeah.
Landfound has given us a great idea here at the Voice of College Football. If you're livid about any of, maybe we should do top 25 that actually makes sense, reactions by all of you. You put a camera on yourself, you send it to me, we'll post it.
Yeah, brother.
We'll see Landfound give his Macho Man impersonation.
And then the other issue that I have is, and I don't have to build a resume for Florida State, and I will, out of respect for Florida State, because that rivalry is pure respect now. There's no hate in it between Miami and Florida State.
I know that you can't speak for all Miami fans because I know one prominent Miami fan who does not agree with you.
Oh, we'll get to Cam. I've got something for Underwood.
No, it's not even Cam, but go ahead.
I mean, listen, as I spoke to a No fan the other day, Boston College is going to play Florida State tough regardless, however bad they are. And they managed to beat them. And they managed to beat Clemson in South Carolina. And then they beat LSU in that opening game, made that shock statement to the world.
Who's disrespecting Florida State?
Well, nobody's talking about them at the Voice of College Football.
I have a whole channel that talks about them every day, practically.
Well, the callers are just excluding Florida State. We people come up with their top 5 lists and they call with their teams. That's great, but they're not even including Florida State in the conversation.
Apparently not. I am.
And when was the last time I saw the Florida State Tomahawk behind you?
It was probably there today. We just did a Florida State show. Do you want me to remove Miami? Is that what you want?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, not at all. Yeah. Hey, the other thing is, I lived in Oklahoma for a while, for almost a decade or longer. And
I've never been to Oklahoma.
Well, I didn't it's good people there.
It's a line in a song too. I've never been to Spain. I've never been to Oklahoma, etc. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And I didn't fully assimilate, obviously, but I did learn about the Oklahoma way and the culture there.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you throwing Mike Gundy out there was just like, throwing it off into the wind, because it's like what happened with, I forgot the coach's name already that went to USC, Lincoln Riley. I'm not justifying the response from the state of Oklahoma or the fan base there. When Lincoln Riley left, I thought it was all BS. Okay. But Mike Gundy, I think Mike Gundy can go 1-10 the next 5 years and his job is still secure. Because Mike Gundy is fully Oklahoma. And they like that there.
You may be right. My first thought is if Mike Gundy goes 1-10 for the next 5 years, we'll probably have a scandal because I don't know what happened to that 12th game. Maybe they didn't play it or something. But anyway, So they go 1-11 for 5 consecutive years. I'm going to guess at some point they're going to oust Mike Gundy out of a job. But I get your point. There are certain coaches, Kirk Ferentz, Mike Gundy, usually has to do with longevity at the school where there is equity that's been built up and respect for that coach and love for that coach. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's up there in Stillwater. So
So you're saying that there's no way that Mike Gundy is going to be fired this year?
I don't know, sir.
Okay.
I don't foresee that. I think he could lose the rest of the games this year, and they won't fire him.
Okay. I'm guessing Oklahoma State. Let's see. I think they're 3-2, maybe 2-3. I think they're 2-3.
Yeah. Yeah.
2-10's not going to get him fired. Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of, oh no. Ooh. Speaking of, Joe Campbell Stadium. You know, I saw Danny Warfel play in the Swamp one time.
I didn't know that. No.
It was remarkable. Oh,
Yeah.
to see Danny Warfel throw that football around. I think it was against Washington or Washington State. They pummeled somebody 65-7. I was in the Swamp. It was the first time. I was at wide right 3, but that's another conversation. But that was cool. Yeah, it was a family friend that their children were going to school at UF, and we drove up. They invited us, and I got to see Danny Warfel play. I had his jersey.
And you became a Miami fan.
Who became no, Mark, from the womb. No, from the womb. Mark, I was predestined.
Oh, okay.
To be a Miami fan. You understand? That's how deep this thing is for the Hurricanes.
But somebody still purchased a Danny Werfel jersey for you and took you to a Florida game.
Happily so.
Okay.
Yeah. Happily so. If I could have a chance to visit Doak, I'd go too.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not criticizing that. I was just questioning that. I just thought since you were a Danny Werfel guy with a jersey that you then became a Miami fan after that. I've never donned the jersey or a t-shirt or sweatshirt, hoodie, cap, anything of any team I did not root for. Never.
We already know that. You don't have to tell us that. We know that. Hey, I forgot what I was going to say now, but I forgot what I was going to say regarding to what you said. Sorry about that. But I did read, speaking of autobiographies, I did read, I remember now, if you allow me. Hey, I would say that the Miami-UF rivalry is more of a heated rivalry than Florida State-Miami. Mark, Florida State comes to Miami, Miami goes to Florida State, there's no problem. We mutually respect each other. Mutual respect now, completely. Before it used to be, when Bobby Bowden was there and like the old Miami teams were there. But I would say recently, and what is it? I'm just throwing out a number up there, but the amount of times Miami has beat Florida State and Florida State beat Miami is about the same now. For the most part, it stays really close.
Miami's got a slight advantage, yes.
If that, I mean, we respect Florida State like no other. Like no other, And I think vice versa. Mark, Miami, let me tell you, in Coral Gables, it's a private university that Howard Schnellenberger came after decades in the NFL or the AFL, picking up all that experience. There's no University of Miami without Howard Schnellenberger. He built the whole thing. That's a private university with what? 10,000 maximum? I can look it up right now. Maximum student body? That's not a public university. And Howard Schnellenberger came in and built that program.
Yeah. You don't need to sell me on Howard Schnellenberger's legacy.
It's a small little university in Coral Gables.
I've posted videos.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of
Howard Schnellenberger, he should be in the Hall of Fame.
In the NFL Hall of Fame?
He should be in the College Football Hall of Fame.
What about the NFL Hall of Fame?
No, I don't believe so.
He spent decades there.
Yeah, maybe as some kind of collaborative contribution, but not as a head coach. No.
I don't want to start quoting things, but I think he worked with Don Shula for
Yes,
years.
he did. Yes, he was
Yeah.
with the Baltimore Colts and the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
All right,
Hey,
Land Found. Anything else you've got for us tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna keep it short and sweet.
But oh yeah, brother, the hurricanes are coming.
Thanks for your time, Mark.
Thanks, Land Found. Appreciate you, man.
Bye.
I'm going to clip that off. That'll probably perform better than anything else we've done here. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We've got
Wow.
David here.
Yeah, it's an interesting crowd you cater to around here at the Voice of College Football.
I cater to.
Yes, well, I'm not going to do any 1980s wrestling impersonations. I'm going to spare the folks in the chat. At least this time. Yes, exactly. Yeah, my Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair need a little bit of work. By the way, can I just say something? You cut a clip on the whole Ryan Day, Lou Holtz thing.
Yes.
I have to say, in all your years at ESPN, you never ran into Lou Holtz in the hallways or had a conversation with Lou Holtz. That just totally surprises me.
I saw him in person a few times. Like,
I'm
in the cafeteria, I'm sitting here, Lou Holtz is sitting over there. Yeah, more than a few times.
Okay. Two proud Kent State alums couldn't have a little
dialogue
or
connection.
Yeah.
I'm not
go flashes.
I'm not a guy that does things like that.
No. Yeah. Just the thought. I mean,
it brings to mind the time that there were texts and emails circulating that Jessica Alba was down in the cafeteria. Let's all
I'd have beeline down there, Mark.
Let's all go down and gawk at Jessica. Do you know what my response was?
I have no idea, but I'd have beeline down there.
My response,
I'm a fan.
I'll let everyone know that I was unattached at the time, so this was not in any violation of any relationship or anything. That I said that doesn't do me any good. Can you set up like a date, a lunch? Like staring at her, that doesn't do anything for me.
I hear you. You.
Didn't go.
All right, well, let's get into some college football. I hear that's what you do around here in between wrestling impersonations.
We were talking about hair before. There was a long conversation. There was a super chat about Ryan Day's Just for Men look at his beard. And of course, I then was basically making the point that if this is the worst thing that can be said of any individual, hey, that's not a bad place to be. There's criticism about the density of your beard color dye. Okay. All right. Fine.
Yeah, I don't got any left, Mike. I fired it before it quit on me. So, I had to do what I had to do.
Yeah.
So
it's a good look.
Yeah. I want to get into your rankings for this week and see where we're at. I actually am looking at it. I would have Texas 1, Team Up North 2. Then I would probably have, Georgia. All these people that are judging Georgia on past performance, I'm one of those that judge the individual season and what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And that's, to be fair, I would still have them in my top 5, but there's just, that performance against Auburn was a game. I don't know if you watched that entire game, Mark, but that's a game they very easily could have lost.
I watched the second half.
Okay. Well, there were opportunities for Auburn in that game.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, Mark, this is not your older brother's SEC. I know DeReal's going to be on here and argue the merits to the SEC until we hear you, DeReal, but this is not, I don't know. This is not the SEC I'm used to. I remember I was having that conversation with you earlier, but I would say this. Okay. I'm weighing Georgia between 3rd and 4th on my list is where I was going with this. Where did you have Oregon on your list? I didn't see.
15.
Wow. You're not buying into Oregon.
No, David.
Well,
please
there's got to be
go on
merit.
with this.
I hear.
To do with who I'm buying in on. Or
Okay.
Who they beat Texas Tech by that much.
Okay.
And they've beaten a bunch of lousy teams. Other than that's the best team they've did. Oregon, Colorado, Texas Tech. Well, if you believe Hollywood, then Colorado's a lot better than anybody else thinks and knows they are. But those are about the same same level of team. They beat the 55th best team in the country. Pounded them into submission, one of them, and the other one they skated by.
But one bottom line question: you wouldn't say that there are 15 better teams that you would take on a neutral field to beat Oregon, though. You wouldn't say that. Okay.
I've got Michigan 18th.
Okay, because obviously you're looking at their strength of schedule and saying that their strength of schedule only warrants them being, that high. See, I will say this for them, and I don't know if you've heard, Mark, I'm not one to defend them, newsflash.
Here we go.
But they have won by a fairly decisive margin over the tomato cans that they've been up against. I think that their Bowling Green performance was a little, lackluster. Even your bromance, Steve Dace, had said that. That game left him wanting and questioning. I listened to his podcast after the game. He was not exactly elated about that performance. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, but, to win every game that they've won by 25 or more points is still, that's still fairly taking care of business.
So you obviously value that over going to South Bend and beating Notre Dame.
Well, here's how I feel about Notre Dame. Right now, if I had you to pick, what did you number one pick Notre Dame's record to be at the end of this before the season started?
10-2.
Okay, that's probably where I'm at right now. I think they'll split Clemson and USC and go 10-2. So if Notre Dame's 10-2, they're a legitimate top 10 team. Probably.
Yes.
They would probably finish in the final ranking somewhere in the top 10. So I tend to agree with you. For this Ohio State team with a fairly young quarterback and a newer offensive line to go and beat an eventual top 10 team on their field, even though it's on the last play. And by the way, can I dispel a narrative about that game that keeps on out there that I just everybody talks about Notre Dame's missed opportunities. All I have to say is Ohio State had 3 possessions inside the 11-yard line and got 3 points out of them and had a drop touchdown pass in the game, by the way. So, you can say Ohio State screwed around and had missed opportunities. Of course, everybody's going to say that those missed opportunities were due to Notre Dame's great defensive play, I'm sure. But
so those 3 possessions, Ohio State got stopped on 4th down once, correct?
Right. Ibuka dropped the touchdown pass right before the half. Right.
And then like old school, and they kicked a field goal after that or missed it on 4th down?
No, they missed the field goal to go up 3-0 at the half.
They got stopped on 4 downs. And then what happened the other time that they
the third one was the jet sweep when you need 3 inches.
Oh, so they got stopped on 2 4th downs.
Yeah,
and had the 11.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the jet sweep would have lived in infamy if Notre Dame would have ran out the clock.
Oh, sure.
We'd have been talking about those missed opportunities, and of course, everybody, all the Notre Dame people would have said, "Well, that's just great." Everybody spins the narrative the way they want to spin the narrative.
Yeah.
But there was no doubt that was a drop touchdown pass. But so you can look at it that way too. But yeah, I actually do think Notre Dame's a 10-2 and top 10 team though. Bottom line. I will say this though, Florida State still gets credit for me because I agree with you. I think Clemson, although here's the thing, Clemson did blow that game, and I still feel Clemson's going 8-4 though. I wonder how much real shine on that victory there is, and I gotta admit, LSU right now is not looking like the LSU, and I picked LSU to win the SEC and make the playoff at the beginning of the year. So
yeah, LSU has some issues, and maybe the entire SEC is going to do what the Pac-12 used to do and cannibalize itself. Maybe, or at least that division might.
It can tend to. I mean, by the way, what's your early feel on Alabama, Texas A&M this week?
I think that's going to be a great game, and defensive-minded people are going to enjoy it. I don't have a serious lean, but I think A&M's. I think they're a legitimate team. They had 15 tackles for loss and 7 sacks against Arkansas, and all the names I saw on registering those kind of numbers were all those 5 stars from a couple of years ago. Those
Right.
guys are they're coming through.
Well, here's the thing. I think that defense is really, really good.
Yes.
It's really good. It looks like one of the kind of old school Satan Saban. Why do I keep on saying that's
A Freudian slip there.
Freudian slip, yes. The Sabanization of college football. But I would say that they've got a great defense. But Milroe is still, I mean, he can hit the deep balls, but his short to intermediate passes, wow, not good. And by the way, could Jimbo Fisher save his job with 2 wins over Nick Saban?
Well, he needs 1 win right now.
Right.
I guess he saved it 2 years ago, unless the buyout was just still too much. I picked both of these teams to go 10-2.
Yeah, you were on the A&M bandwagon, which I didn't quite get that. I actually thought this was going to be it for him. I actually thought that this was going to be Fisher's swan song at Texas A&M this year. Although it's tough because they backed up the Brinks truck and gave him all that cash, but still, I mean, one good year and a COVID year with all they gave him, which I think we both agree was wasn't all what it cracked up to be.
No.
So yeah, I mean, I'm picking Alabama in that one, but I think that's a 1 possession game, Mark. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yes, I think it's going to be a good one. Yep.
I wanted to, so I would actually, because I'm debating about whether I would have Florida State ahead of Ohio State. Or do you think that's much of a debate?
No, Clemson and LSU greater than Notre Dame. And there's more to it than that, but that's the gist of it.
Okay. Right now I would have the Buckeyes between 5th and 6th. Is basically.
I believe I've got them 6.
Okay.
I've got Florida State 2.
Okay.
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I would still put Florida State probably 4 or 5, maybe. I might have them ahead of Georgia right now. I know you probably do.
I've got Georgia 8.
Well, based on your criteria, I would see why you would do that.
Yeah. But so, I think they're one of the 3 or 4 best teams.
I actually am pretty solid with Texas at number 1. I think Sark's got a really good roster. He's got his quarterback this year. Do you think that's a close game this week? Because I'm wondering how if Oklahoma's a little bit fraudulent. I mean, they beat Cincinnati at Cincinnati by 2 touchdowns, and I think they're a little bit counterfeit, Mark.
I'm not convinced that I'm right. Like, I'm not touting this. I've not been saying this much, but I kind of threw this out during our Oklahoma show today. That's kind of where I'm at. Right. I'm at Oklahoma being more like a top 20 team and Texas being a top 3 team. And I don't see Oklahoma where they're better than Texas.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about overall. They're not better than Texas. I mean, like in any individual portion of either side of the ball, I don't know where they're better than Texas.
Right. Unless, that quarterback channels his inner Sam Bradford or Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray and goes off on that Texas defense, I don't see a path to victory. I think yours and their skill players. And plus, I think Texas is stronger in the trenches than they've been probably in a while.
Oh, in forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like a long time, maybe since like the Mac Brown years, Mark.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They are.
So, I mean, I picked Texas to win the conference at the beginning of the year, but I did not see Texas being this strong, although I didn't see Texas going into Tuscaloosa and winning by 10 points either. Although I did bet the game. That line was a little bit too high. Want to give you kind of also an early feel on what I think of the Ohio State game this week. I do think Maryland is tricky this week. I listened to the Buckeye show today. I think little Tua could cause them some problems. That passing game, I think their skill on the outside is better than Notre Dame's. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would too. On the outside, they don't have a Notre Dame tight end.
No.
That guy's really good.
Do you think that Hembry, that running back, is on the same level as Estime, or would you? I would still think Estime might be a slightly better back than him.
Yes, Estime's just a monster. Like Estime's like Bettis, Campbell, kind of like hips, thighs. Well, I'm not elevating to Hall of Fame status in the NFL, but I'm just talking about that guy. Man, I would not want to get in front of that guy. Well, at this point, I wouldn't want to get in front of anyone, but yeah, I just think there's a physicality there that's hard to match across college football.
Well, hey, I've seen your cardio routine, Mark. You're staying in good shape. Give yourself some credit. I would say this. I do think that their skill can cause some issues. What I'm wondering is just how good Maryland is on the defensive side of the ball. For that matter, I think a lot of people are wondering, where's the ceiling of this Ohio State offense? And that's what I'm wondering. Particularly where's McCord's growth? And can they get more out of their running game than they've gotten so far? I do think Henderson has looked good, looked a little bit closer to the running back we saw as a freshman, especially since they've gotten him to the perimeter. But it's just that they haven't been able to run the ball, like I put in the chat today, on the interior as much as they need to. And that's the other thing I think they need to get right, is that and start to get back to maybe generating a little bit more explosives in the passing game.
Yeah, we'll see if Maryland is a better team than what they've been in the past. And I think the answer is somewhere in between. I don't believe that they're equipped to push these teams to the brink or win these games, but I think that they're going to, and they did against Ohio State and Michigan last year. They didn't take them down to the last play of the game, but
no,
they certainly played well into the fourth quarter of competitive football.
Right, yeah, both were good games for essentially 3.5. Well, our game was a little bit closer, but Team Up North's game ended up being a touchdown game. I guess they scored a late touchdown and then had to try an onside kick with a couple minutes left.
Yeah,
but that was at least a competitive game going into the fourth quarter. You're right. That's kind of how I get a vibe of this one. I think if I'm actually thinking about taking the 19. You believe the line's that high?
Yeah, I can believe the line's that high. Ohio State and Alabama and now Georgia, but Ohio State and Alabama, they get a lot of line value out of Vegas, and it's justified. It's justified. If you look at Ohio State and Alabama through the years, they pretty much go 500 against the spread. But the lines are enormous. Well, yeah. David, we've got callers behind you. We need to.
That's okay, Mark. Hey, you doing a live stream on Friday before the games?
I believe we will do it after the games.
Oh, okay. After the Friday night games?
A big Illinois, Nebraska game.
Yeah.
Hold the Big Ten in balance.
Big Bad Brett, boy, this is going to be a bit down year for Big Bad Brett.
Yep.
I think so. All right. Good show, Mark. You take care of yourself.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Super chats. Thank you for those. Appreciate you. James says Texas, number 1, Michigan, 2, Florida State, 3, Oregon, 4, playoff. Thoughts? Very reasonable, very doable, probable, not. Of course, nothing's probable. By math standards, none of our playoff situations are probable, but absolutely, that could happen. Now, I would say in order of likeliness, I would say Texas 1, Florida State 2, Michigan 3, Oregon 4, or maybe even Michigan 2, not just based on winning the Big Ten championship, but possibly being an 11-1 team that loses a key game in the Big Ten, but still makes the playoffs. We are just 10 minutes away, 9 minutes away now from the Pac-12 chat show. So we want to get out of the way for those fine folks. So we're going to do that. We got John on the line. John, what's going on tonight?
Hey,
This is a rare appearance. At least a rare appearance on my show. You know, you're
well,
all over the place for us.
I try to clear the deck to give everyone an opportunity. I think you have enough Wolverine callers usually, as is. But thanks, Erica, for the super chat.
Thank you, Erica. Real quick, John, I'll hit this. We've got, hey, Michigan fans, if you keep saying this stuff, he's going to start pushing the mini helmet off the shelf again.
I enjoyed that. That was great. I saw that. I enjoyed that.
It's funny that she brings that up because what was running through my head right when I started to read that was that in your honor, John, I was actually going to post the Michigan mini helmet. Let's see.
Bring them. How about that?
Here.
Okay.
Okay. Proceed.
So I just have one comment, which, so I did watch the Michigan podcast with Steve Dace, and you guys always have a great interaction. And the discussion that has come up repeatedly around the college football ecosystem about, does Michigan have the talent to win the national championship? Not are they going to, but do they have the talent to potentially do it? And I thought he had a really good point in pointing out, would you rather have a 5-star 18-year-old guard, or would you rather have 5th-year senior Zach Zinner, who's maybe a high 4-star? I thought that was one of the better points he's made this year, honestly, because at the end of the day, does Michigan have the same amount of talent, the blue chip ratio as Georgia? No, we've established that, right? They're going to have JJ have an all-time performance, just like Clemson did with a lower blue chip ratio than Michigan in 2016. So yeah, I thought that was spot on, Mark. I mean, I'm sure you had some time to reflect on it since then, but.
Well, I don't know that I have anything further to say than my response was, yes, that's an astute comment. Absolutely it is. I don't have this criticism of 247 Sports. I just have this question of this becoming a more complicated process of making these evaluations and rankings, because before it was just flat out, nobody's transferring, or it's very rare, and they're usually not impact players. And so you've got this ranking that is based fully on the recruiting rankings, and you could almost do a division and say Ohio State was number 3, number 4, number 2, number 4 in recruiting, or divided by there's their team total. And there you go. Yeah. And they had a few leave early for the NFL. You got to take those guys out there you go. Well, now it's an extreme. So then you have to evaluate, okay, Josiah Stewart transfers in from Coastal Carolina. We certainly can't take his recruiting ranking from 4 years ago. It's meaningless now.
Right.
He has outplayed that through the roof, or he wouldn't have gone to Coastal Carolina. And so now he is probably an honorable mention all Big Ten kind of player. Maybe he's a third team. I don't know. He's
it's up there
he's on a close to all conference. And just as an example, so how are they compensating for that in that, and are they formulating all that? And even if they're doing a really good job at it, it's a difficult process and difficult to do it accurately.
Yeah, it's difficult in the 2023 era where you have NIL and people staying for 5th and 6th years, and the COVID year where everybody got an extra year, and the transfer portal and everything else. It's tough to factor all of that in with your star ratings as well, and your talent ratings. So totally get that. And actually the other point, and then I know you have 2 more callers and we want to get to the Pac-12 chat show live. But my bone to pick, and it's not necessarily with you, it's more just with the ain't played nobody argument. Okay. I've heard this ain't played nobody argument. Why does it apply to Michigan more than Georgia? Because I look at Auburn, 5th in the SEC West, as I think Rutgers could beat Auburn 5 or 6 times out of 10. Is that an unfair statement to make?
I don't think it's ridiculous for you to make that statement. I don't agree with it, but I don't think it's ridiculous. I think those are two different things. Like I could go on here and say, you could make certain statements that I'd say, well, this is ridiculous, and this is why A, B, C, D, and carve up your point of view. But I don't think that's ridiculous in any such way, because we both have very little evidence. We both know that those aren't horrible teams, but they're not really, really good teams either. So a 5-5 series, I think Auburn's considerably more talented than Rutgers.
Okay.
I think they win.
I think you get my point though,
yeah,
right?
I get your point.
Georgia struggled mightily against Auburn, and Michigan put away Rutgers by the second half.
Oh yeah.
Right. So at the end of the day, I just don't understand why. I mean, maybe Georgia gets the benefit of the doubt because they did win the last 2 national titles, but a lot of those players are in the NFL now, except for, of course, Brock Bowers, maybe the best tight end we've seen in decades. I mean, he's incredible.
Yes.
But he's one player. They have a new quarterback. I think Carson Beck's pretty good, but I don't know if he's going to be able to lead the team to a 3rd title. It's very, very rare to be able to do. I don't think anybody's done it in a long, long, long time. Right. So I don't know. I just don't know why there's a disparity there. That's what I'm wondering.
In my rankings.
No. I'm saying just
in the national.
I'm saying in the ecosystem of Michigan ain't played nobody, but then you look at Georgia and it's like you don't hear the same arguments.
Yeah, South Carolina, Auburn are their 2 reasonable opponents.
Right. Yeah. And are they better than Rutgers and Nebraska? I'd say they're collectively a little better, but I don't think it's by a lot. And Georgia struggled a lot more against those 2 than Michigan.
Yes.
Who literally Nebraska. Yeah, and you said it on Michigan podcast. I mean, it was surgical precision to the point where it was boring, is what you said, and it's very true.
Yeah, and Nebraska is not good, but they have Big Ten players. You know, they're not like this depleted, like the worst Northwestern team we've ever seen, or Rutgers. You know, they've recruited fine, and they're a mid-level. Even if they kind of are dysfunctional and do stupid things and continue on that road of mediocrity and lose to teams that they shouldn't to, but they've got athletes on the field. And Michigan just, I thought Michigan would beat them soundly, but that even surpassed my expectation. And I even made the comment, and it hit me at one point during the week, similar to when Iowa went to Penn State. It simply hit me like, how is Nebraska going to score? Like, I don't even see how they're going to score.
Yeah.
And that's basically what it turned out to be.
Well, those were my 2 points. And I know that we want to get to the Pac-12 chat show. So I'm just going to remind everybody to please like the video, subscribe, join the Patreon, YouTube membership, and all that good stuff.
Absolutely, John. John, we appreciate all that you do. You can catch John on the Michigan Live show. It's over on the Michigan channel every Tuesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern. If you've lost track of it, it used to be on Wednesday. Tuesday, 8 Eastern on the Michigan channel.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, John. And John does a phenomenal job of bringing on tremendous guests, typically from the media from the teams that Michigan is facing that particular week. All right, in rapid fire fashion, we've got Porter checking in. Porter.
Hey. What's
How you
going
doing?
on, Mark? Hey, I was going to talk about something else, but John, Two Scoop John kind of stole my thunder. I wanted to address kind of what he was just saying. Georgia and Michigan have both been to the last 2 playoffs. Is that correct?
Yes.
What's Georgia's record in the last 2 playoffs?
4-0.
What's Michigan's?
0-2.
Okay. Would you say that Georgia's players have a little bit more of that championship DNA than Michigan?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, and by the way, two scoops. You want a discount on win against Auburn? We went down to Auburn, and we beat a quarterback that actually beat Michigan. Did you know Peyton Thorne beat Michigan?
I'm aware of it. Yes, I keep track
Yeah,
of those sorts of things.
John, make sure you remember that Peyton Thorne beat you.
Well,
So if you want a
Porter,
discount on win against Auburn and Peyton Thorne beat you. So just don't forget that, my friend.
okay, this is to throw another angle in here, Porter, and this isn't right or wrong or a criticism of what you just delivered. It's just a different way of looking at things.
Mm-hmm.
Most of what you just stated happened in the past, did not happen this season. So are we ranking teams on legacy, or are we ranking them based on this season's performance?
Oh, did we have a total turnover of the stat of the roster? I had no idea. That's interesting. So we had a total turnover of the roster. Is that what you're telling me?
So do I get to walk into my job on January 1st and throw my feet on the desk and say, I've been here for 19 years. I get to do whatever the hell I want because I've done a lot here and been rated very highly for it, but I don't need to perform this year.
If you've had 2 great years where you just knocked your sales out of the park, you damn skippy, you get to do that. You have a winning track record. You know how to win. You have that you know how to get things done. So for you to say that the past doesn't matter, we have 90%, well, I should say 90%, 80% of our players have a national championship ring.
That's
roughly.
Great. And those championship rings, you know what they say on them that's key to this? One of them says 2021 on it, and one of them says 2022 on it. So they've been rewarded for that, and that's what happened in those particular seasons. But why not? Why wouldn't you want them to be evaluated based on what they've done this season? And when they prove it this season, then they'll be rewarded.
That's fine, but you're discounting this championship DNA that exists on the roster. I don't see how you can.
I'm not discounting anything. It's not about me making a predict. And for one thing, I don't even know what we're arguing exactly because I guess you're citing some kind of disrespect for Georgia, but you have to understand that they struggled against teams that are pretty questionable.
It's not disrespect. I'm just amazed at somebody like a Michigan fan who, if you want to do a parallel to the two programs the last 2 years, Georgia's 4-0 in the playoffs and Michigan is 0-2 in the playoffs.
But he's not doing that, I don't believe. I think I can speak for him.
My gosh, how the heck is Georgia ranked above Michigan? I'm thinking, dude, we got the DNA. These guys have the memory. We have the muscle memory. We have the confidence. We have all this stuff, these intangibles that Michigan doesn't have.
He's
and for this guy to get on
the results of the two teams this year. That's what he's doing.
But Mark, you're smarter than that, Mark. You cannot say that a group of players that is used to winning, that knows how to win, you can't equate that with a group of players that have won a lot, but they haven't won on the national stage.
Yes, I rarely say this about myself, but I will say, yes, I am smarter than that. We're talking about two different things. Whether you're talking about whether I'm going to go to Vegas and lay down a bet and put confidence in Georgia versus ranking teams based on the merit of this season's play are two different things. I acknowledge everything that you're saying about Georgia's DNA. I completely acknowledge that, understand it, believe it's valid, probably just as much as you do. But I'm not going to let that impede my brain in evaluating and ranking teams this season based on what they've done on the field.
Well, I'm not really talking about you. I'm not really talking about your I'm not really talking about your rankings per se. I'm really talking about Two Scoop John had just called in and just is so dumbfounded by the whole thing. I'm thinking, dude, where have you been?
Well, okay. So again, I think there's a disconnect because I agree with both of you because he's dumbfounded by just simply looking at, okay, who are the two best teams that Georgia's played. Okay, this is how they performed against those two. Okay, who are the two best teams that Michigan has played? Okay, this is a general valuation of how good they are, and Michigan's smacked them around. And just basically saying, why can't Michigan be ranked ahead of Georgia based on just looking at the games? Where you're looking at, let's evaluate these two teams and what we know about what they're capable of.
Yes, but also look at the intangibles about what program knows how to win and which program has won on the regional level when they're won the Big Ten as a very good program. I have no problem with Michigan. I respect Michigan, but come on, the intangibles clearly point to Georgia just because they've done it. They know how to do it.
So if we were sitting here 2 years ago in 2021 and Georgia's carving through teams and we're making an evaluation of Georgia and ranking them, we're always just automatically going to rank Alabama ahead of Georgia and Clemson in front of Georgia because they've got championship DNA.
Well, in 2021, Georgia beat Clemson.
True. I'm just using, an analogy just to basically say prior to Georgia winning the national championship in 2021, they were in a similar place in some respects as to Michigan right now.
No, not really, because Georgia had a playoff win when they beat Oklahoma. So there was a 4-year stretch where Georgia was used to going to Sugar Bowl and Peach Bowls and Rose Bowls and all that. So it kind of built up. So, but I see what you're saying. It's a good point you're saying. I'm just saying that I think Georgia's going into the 2021 season was more proven than say Michigan is because Georgia had a playoff win. Michigan's never had a playoff win.
I've got a feeling what we should do, Porter, is bring in Mike Ford because he's a big Michigan fan. Bring him in, and I should probably just walk away and let this go on for the next 3 hours. Mike, how you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm about to get so good. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing just fine. I apologize for not recognizing that was you down in the little box. I see people pop up, but unless I really look down and look to see who it is, I just think, okay, there's another caller. I'll get to them next. But I would have brought you in sooner because I know as a Michigan fan, I'm sure you would take some exception. So here we go.
Well, I was actually in StreamYard earlier, but I left because I was kind of getting ready to go to the USC. But in this one, I will say that I don't care about this DNA stuff because, like I said in the chat, Fox has never shown me a picture of a double helix standing in the end zone with a football in it. So this DNA stuff, all I know is that if you were to just put a big black box over the name Georgia and put a big black box over the name Michigan, and you put down their schedule with the teams they played and the score that they've played them by, and you just said, blind pick, you pick team A, team B. There is no way you would pick Georgia over Michigan. Absolutely not. I mean, you're talking about, no loss. I mean, no win with under 20. I think our closest game was 25 points, I want to say.
Yeah. And
meanwhile, you have, a road game at Auburn where it was tied in the fourth. I think it was 5-6 minutes left whenever Georgia took the lead. And then you have South Carolina. This is a team that North Carolina beat the brakes off of, and their defense, which was horrible last year, and I don't think it's stepped up that much in 2023. They lived in South Carolina's backfield. I think it was 9 sacks, 16 tackles for loss. This was an inept defense last year, and they won by 10 in Athens. So we need to just kill this right now, because if you were just to take the name off of it, I don't believe in this DNA, whatever. That's an excuse. If you were to just take these two resumes face to face, take out the name Georgia, take out the Michigan, there's no way you would pick Georgia over Michigan. There's just not.
It's not an excuse. It's an intangible that you can't run away from. So I don't know what you're talking about excuse. It's when you're used to winning, you can't just you can't just have 100% turnover of the roster. that is going to carry over to the next year. So I think that's what Vegas and whoever else, when they give you the lines, when they do the rankings, they have to take that into consideration.
Well, does
I don't know what
Michigan
you
not
say.
Michigan not used to winning or something? Because I mean, if you take away the 2 playoff games, we're 25 of the last 26.
25 of the last 20. Oh, wins.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean,
13-0, 12-1.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not like we were some 8-5 team that just finally got a ticket to the dance. We do have a little bit of a record of winning.
You talking about before 2021?
Yeah.
Okay. What was your last 10-win season before that?
I'd have to go back and check. 2020 was the COVID year was terrible for us.
18, 10-3.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Because I think 19 was kind of out. I mean, this is not. We're not a TCU. We're not. The new rule of the dance. I mean, I know the playoffs are a little bit new to us, but it's not like winning has been a foreign concept in Michigan. But I'm not a big fan of taking out what teams used to be because nobody on this 2018 squad is playing right now. So that's not a factor.
Yeah.
And
I have no problem you saying they've looked more impressive this year. I mean, I really don't care, to be honest with you. It's what the team is made of, and I think when you look at the rankings and you look at the lines for the different games, I think they take all that into consideration. So I mean,
Are we also factoring in the fact that your running game is pretty much non-existent, and this might be the worst offensive line you've had in a few years?
I'm not going to concede that. I mean, they're going to be fine. I mean, they returned, I think, 4 starters out of 5. So I know the talent is there. So
well, it's Georgia. There's going to be some talent, but there's an obvious drop off from 2022 and definitely from 2021.
Well, I tell you what, I was trying to think. I'm glad you said that, Mike, because I was trying to think, go back in time and try to compare this team to other teams that have had a nice run. And what I thought about was that what Georgia reminds me of is that those Notre Dame teams in the early 1990s, if y'all remember back then when you had you went from Tony Rice to Rick Meyer. That's kind of what they remind me of. When you kind of went from more of a running game, Notre Dame, and then you with Ricky Waters and the others, and then you kind of went to more of a passing game. So that's what it appears to be in looking at Georgia, and it seemed like the Notre Dame teams, once Rick Meyer got there, they won a lot of games by by a lot of close games, and they put the ball in the air more. So that's I don't think we have the same type of makeup in terms of the way we're winning games, but that winning DNA, like I keep saying, I'm sure y'all are sick of hearing me say that, is still there. So I think that's why we're getting the benefit of the down in the polls. But I have no problem with Michigan. I have nothing against Michigan, but I was just kind of, I really didn't call in to talk about this. I really wanted to kind of brag on myself. I called Mark the day before the season started. I said my 4 playoff teams are Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and Florida State. And I'm proud to say that all 4 are still undefeated. So it's kind of what I called to but then when I heard 2 Scoop John, I have nothing against two Scoop John. I mean, I just kind of dumbfounded. I'm like, he was kind of nitpicking, talking about Rutgers being better than Auburn, and I was just like, God, it's kind of nitpicking. But anyway, that's what I called about. But
well, I mean, it's an understandable argument because, like I said, Rutgers is 4-1. So if you take out that one loss, they're 4-0, and none of those 4 games were close. And this does include Power 5 wins.
Where did y'all play Rutgers? I didn't keep up with where you guys played them.
We played them at home.
Yeah. Well, there's a little difference between, hosting a team from New Jersey and going down to Jordan-Hare Stadium, just for your information.
Oh yeah, I remember the 2013 game all too well.
Yeah, it's a tough place to win.
I mean, and that was actually the reason I called in. Is like, I mean, people keep talking about Michigan's strength of schedule, but this feels like a comparison on 2022 and not updated through week 6 of 2023, because I don't think that people were talking about Michigan having a triple digit strength of schedule based on what we've done so far.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I haven't really kept up, but I haven't really heard many showdowns up that way. So other than Ohio State going into Notre Dame, there haven't been a lot of big games in the Big Ten that I'm aware of. So I haven't really been keeping up. So, but what's Penn State's best game? What's their best win?
Looks like right now probably West Virginia.
West Virginia, okay. And then you say Michigan's best win is Rutgers?
I would say probably Rutgers, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I thought Nebraska would be a little bit better than they are, but their Rule doesn't have this team where he needs to at yet. They're coming, but I don't see them there yet.
Well, it's all going to work itself out. I mean, I could be eat my words, which is okay, but we'll just see what happens. I just, again, I have nothing against Michigan. I was just kind of like taken aback by what Two Scoop John said. So,
well, I mean, and I know why Georgia's won. Like I said, they're back to back, and it's kind of like I say, for the wrestling guys in there, Ric Flair is saying is to be the man, you got to beat the man. So Georgia is going to be a preseason number 1, and they're probably, I thought last week was probably the best chance because we're going to end up playing Minnesota, which is not good. They lost to Northwestern. Northwestern might be one of the 3 worst Power 5 teams in the country, whereas you're going to play against a ranked Kentucky. So if you win that game, the gap's just going to get bigger. But I mean,
if you believe in strength of schedule,
it doesn't
if you believe in strength of schedule, Michigan's 81 and Georgia's 92 right now.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's all going to sort itself out. I just sit tight, take care of business in Ann Arbor when Ohio State comes, and you'll be back in it.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I'm still wondering how people are still taking Ohio State. I mean, when you consider the fact, I mean, if you want to talk about previous and DNA and whatever have you, we've beaten them twice in the last 2 years, both times, and with a combined score, we've outscored them by 39 points. Plus, it's in Ann Arbor this year.
Wait a minute. What are you questioning? Why people would think Ohio State can beat Michigan?
I mean, well, like when Porter just said, his 4 playoff teams, I noticed he picked Ohio State, not Michigan. It's like, I just can't. I'm not saying that Ohio State has no chance, but it seems kind of odd to pick them now. Maybe I'm just having a homer hat. I don't know, but it seems like picking Ohio State over Michigan right now there's really no justification for it.
Well,
I didn't pick them now. I picked them I guess the Friday before we all kicked off the season.
Yeah, and the preseason was still Michigan, back-to-back Big Ten champions. Michigan back-to-back blowout wins over Ohio State. So it just seems kind of weird to take. I mean, it'd be kind of like picking Oklahoma. I mean, now Oklahoma's good, but it'd be picking Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry, knowing last year Texas just beat the ever-loving hell out of them. Now this is a worse Oklahoma team last year.
Well, I mean, but I'll be honest with you, I feel better about my pick of Ohio State just because how good their defense is.
Okay, and Mark will attest. There was a lot of people in Ohio State, barking up that defense until the rubber met the road. Mark?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly right. And Michigan played a great fourth quarter to quarter and a half there and outplayed Ohio State after Ohio State didn't take advantages of how much they outplayed Michigan in the first half, and that was to their demise. They only had a 3-point lead, and then Michigan dominated I don't know that they dominated the second half. They dominated the fourth quarter. And
well, this second half was 28-3, so it was pretty much front to back.
Yeah, there is context to the game, though. The last touchdown didn't matter. At that point, it's just, there's a minute left, 2 minutes left, and they score a touchdown from 80 yards or whatever. But anyway, that game ended when Ohio State was down 2 scores and had the ball at the Michigan 10.
And Stroud threw the interception.
Yeah, there was a ricochet shot for an interception that, and that's when the game was over. When that was the next play, Ohio State's deflated defense walks on the field down by 2 scores and the game's over and gives up a third touchdown. So, I don't know that Michigan was better than Ohio State overall last season. I think that's debatable.
There's an argument that could be made. I mean, sometimes
Michigan,
it's just not your
Michigan has the most important argument point that they won decisively when they played. But when the teams were playing at their best, obviously we saw what Ohio State did against Georgia. So,
yeah, I mean, a lot of respect for that. What, Mark, remind me, you guys, for what I remember, that Penn State game last year, did you guys go to Penn State and pretty much shut them out defensively? I want to say I remember number 44 returned.
No, it was a really good game. It was a really good game. Yeah, JT Tuimoloau had one of the craziest games you'll ever, most dominant games. But Ohio State didn't pull away until about the 10-minute mark of the fourth quarter. Yeah, it was a really close game.
All right, let me ask both of you guys, an Ohio State guy, a Michigan guy. Are you guys buying into Penn State?
Yes.
Really? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Their defense is loaded.
Well, I think the defensive line's a little undersized, but it's performing well so far. And I think Drew Allar, it might be the stone that puts him in the running.
So what happens if that division, everybody beats everybody else?
Oh,
I don't even want to think about that.
It comes down, basically what it comes down to is like a 7th tiebreaker, which would be the team that played the best 3 teams from the other division. So the 3 teams on the other side of the conference that have the best record.
Okay.
Well, we'd lose that one. We got we got Minnesota and Nebraska. You don't win that one.
Yeah, and Illinois has been a big disappointment this year.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest knock on Penn State. Penn State's, in my opinion, their worst game was probably when they went to Illinois. I mean, they still won by double digits, but they didn't look pretty doing it.
Yeah.
And Illinois has a precipitous drop off from last year.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, listen, I don't want you to cannibalize your other channels. I know everybody's wanting to go to the Pac-12 channel. So anyway, good talking to you guys, and have a good rest of the week and safe weekend.
Thanks, Porter.
God
Appreciate
bless.
it.
See you.
God bless you. Have a good night.
And
Mike,
I'll be over on I'll just be over on the USC channel here in a minute.
Oh, they're right here. They are right here on the same channel.
Well, I mean, I still have the Big Ten in front of me, so I'm going to switch over here in a minute.
Well, thanks a lot, Mike.
Thanks a lot.
All right, folks, the Pac-12 chat show has just started, and it's airing right here on this main channel. So you can keep it right here. You can click right on it on the front page. They're going live, Tim, Tony, and company there. So join the Pac-12 chat show. Let's see. This is Wednesday night, Thursday. Oh, we got a lot of great stuff lined up. I won't even try to get into it. A lot of great stuff lined up for Thursday. So join us. Yes, just be watching out for videos, previews, all that sort of thing leading into Friday. We will see you next time. That should be Friday night after the 2 football games, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Illinois and Nebraska. See you then.